Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners, Assistant Chief Labrada, Mr. T-Fank, Mr. Secretary, Madam Secretary, Mr. Inspector General Mark Smith, Mr. City Attorney Carlos De La Guerra, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, May 9th, 2023. It is 9:30 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioners Brigg, Southers, Calanche, and Shields are present. And we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We welcome everyone attending this morning. All public comment will be heard during item number 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. The order of the speakers will be the speaker in this room will go first, then we will take a speaker watching today's meeting on Zoom. We will alternate between speakers in the room and Zoom for a total of 45 minutes. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board. So you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinion shall be deemed off topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in the public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in a number of ways outlined on the agenda. For those present, please submit a speaker card to one of the officers who will give the card to the board secretary. For those on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand. Those attending in person are reminded that disruptive behavior will be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, you will be provided with only 1 warning to cease disruptive behavior. If you fail to cease such disruptive behavior, you will be removed from the meeting. At this time, we're going to go to item number 1 on the agenda. Good morning, Chief Labrada.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Briggs, Board of Police Commissioners, Mr. T-Fank, Mr. Inspector General, Mr. City Attorney, and members of the public. My name is Al Labrada. I'll be presenting today on behalf of Chief Michael Moore. My distinct honor to be here and present the current state of our department and provide updates on various topics. I'd like to start with community events. This week begins the start of National Police Week ceremonies, activities nationwide. In 1962, President Kennedy proclaimed May 5th as the National Police Officers Memorial Day and the calendar week in which it falls as National Police Week. This is in recognition of officers who have given their lives in the line of duty while protecting and serving others in our community. Yesterday at the state capitol, Chief Mike Moore joined the family of Officer Tipping, along with countless law enforcement officers, leaders, and elected officials, to honor the 9 fallen officers from the state this last year. Last Wednesday, additionally, we had a May 3rd celebration. Chief Moore was joined by Commissioner Soboroff, Shields, and various local, state, and federal leaders, accompanied members of the fallen officers, of LAPD officers, at the department's annual ceremony that was held at police headquarters to memorialize the fallen. Chief Moore hosted a breakfast with the families of fallen officers before the memorial ceremony. This is always a sobering ceremony as it reflects and honors those who, in our city, gave so much for our residents and gave the ultimate sacrifice protecting the residents. On Thursday, May 4th, we attended services for our fallen officer, Officer Baldemar Jerry Sandoval. Thank you for the public support and, more importantly, the support of the commission and others that have reached out to the family and the department in this tragic time. Today, members of the LAPD, along with hundreds of law enforcement officers, are cycling and other cycling enthusiasts will be setting out from New Jersey on a 3-day bike ride that will culminate in their arrival at the National Law Enforcement Memorial on May 12th. This is known as a police unity tour, and along the ride, the large group will stop along the route and honor various fallen officers. These officers, along with thousands more, will participate in the 35th annual Candlelight Vigil on May 13th at the National Mall. Tragically, there will be an additional 224 names added to the National Law Enforcement Memorial of fallen officers for the wall of the fallen officers killed in the line of duty in 2022. 2 of them added to the wall will be from LAPD. Police Officer Fernando Arroyos, who passed away on January 10, 2022, and Police Officer Houston Tipping, who passed away May 29, 2022. Along with 9 other officers from the state of California, their names will forever be remembered at the memorial walls. This symbolizes a protective role of our law enforcement officers and conveys the strength, courage, and valor which are the hallmarks of those who serve our communities. Additionally, in the coming weeks, on May 25th, the department will dedicate a memorial to our fallen canines. During that ceremony, we'll also honor the 3 brave officers who were recently wounded during an incident involving an armed and dangerous individual in the community. Finally, last week, Chief Michael Moore attended several community events to support our outreach and engagement and trust efforts in our city. On Thursday, May 4th, our department hosted an API at the Anderson Munger YMCA in West Bureau. This event was our official launch to Asian American Heritage Month, and today we'll hear a great presentation on the work that's being done by our Asian American liaisons, as well as our efforts in the community. On Friday, May 5th, Chief Moore attended the Academy graduation and welcomed an additional 26 LAPD officers to our department. And on Saturday, May 6th, Chief Moore attended the Police Academy Magnet graduation commencement ceremony, highlighting the commitment of our youth in our city, and more importantly, the youth within our communities. And then on Saturday, May 6th, Chief Moore and LAPD personnel and countless community leaders came together to honor and thank our reserve officers. Over 400 reserve officers commit their time and volunteerism to supporting our city and public safety. And it was a good opportunity for us to come again together to honor those that have been honored as the most committed reserve officers. I'd like to highlight 2 incidents that came about that were newsworthy. The first incident involved a homicide last night. It occurred at Lincoln and 90 Freeway on-ramp. It involved a road rage incident that unfortunately resulted in the demise of an individual in his late 20s. This incident is a reminder to our community to please not get involved in these road rage incidents. If you do become the victim of a road rage incident, please dial 911 and make sure that you do not get confronted or become engaged in these confrontations. Sadly, all indications is this was a road rage incident that resulted in the death of an individual. West Bureau Homicide is currently investigating this case and will continue to do so actively. The other incident I'd like to update is the 2 students that were stabbed near LA High School on May 1st. I'm happy to report that West Bureau was actively investigating this case, and as of yesterday, was able to confirm that they have arrested 3 individuals as a result of this incident. One of the individuals was a 23-year-old male from the area, in the southwest area, and 2 other individuals that were juveniles. All of the individuals were arrested and booked for attempted murder. Unfortunately, the victim sustained paralyzing injuries as a result of the stab wounds. At this time, I'd like to give an overview on our crime picture. For the week ending May 6, 2023, compared to 2022 year-to-date, violent crime is down 10.7%. Property crime is down 2.1%, and Part 1 crime is down 4.1%. There was 1 homicide for this week versus 11 the same time last year. We have a reduction of 39% in homicides. There were 14 victims shot for the week versus 25 for the same week in 2022, with a reduction of 16.2%. We are down in every violent crime category, including a 16.8% reduction in robberies. We are down in all property crime categories except for theft. Year-to-date, thefts are up 9.9% compared to 2022, and nearly 75% of the increased thefts can be attributed to Central Bureau and South Bureau. Violent crime arrests are up 3.0%, and Part 1 arrests are up 6.1%, and all arrests are up 2.1%. With the rise of thefts, particularly large retailers, we continue to work with the organized retail organizations, business, community, and local business leaders to improve the safety of retailers citywide. The importance of environmental design by these businesses is creating a safe and secure environment for spaces of retailers, and it's a significant step in helping the safety and security of these businesses. We remain committed to our fundamental duty to protect, serve, and utilize all department resources to minimize the fear of crime. Our goal is to continue to work collaboratively with our community and city family to maximize public safety. As Chief Moore continues to highlight and has stressed, partnerships with the community, businesses through education, prevention, and efforts will continue to improve our community safety with our department. Now I'd like to brief on 2 officer-involved shootings and 1 non-intentional discharge that occurred between May 1st and May 5th. The first is a non-tactical unintentional discharge. This occurred on May 1st, 2023 at approximately 11:38 in the morning at the Academy at Elysian Park. At approximately 11:38, a on-duty sergeant assigned to training division was in his workspace when he removed his duty belt to visit the restroom. He unholstered his firearm from his duty belt, removed the seated magazine, and then placed the firearm on the desk. Another on-duty police officer, also assigned to traffic division, and the presence of the sergeant picked up the firearm and a non-tactical unintentional discharge occurred. One round was discharged in an upward direction, and it impacted a glass window. Fortunately, nobody was injured, and after an extensive canvass, no evidence of the round was discovered. No one was injured during this incident, and as always, Force Investigation Division will conduct a thorough investigation and render the findings. The other involved an officer-involved shooting that occurred at the platform at 330 North Vermont Avenue involving transit officers. This occurred on May 2nd at approximately 9:40 in the morning, where transit officers assigned in an overtime detail were flagged down by a male Hispanic 18-year-old who informed them and showed him a picture on his cell phone of an individual who just threatened him with a knife. The officers immediately took action and began to look for the individual. The officers responded to the second floor of the platform area and identified the individual and began to give commands and observed him in possession of a knife. Officers repeatedly ordered Swainer, the individual, to drop the knife. And as the suspect fled, the officers gave chase. As the individual fled up the second and third floor escalator area, he confronted a victim, a female Hispanic who was approximately 74 years of age. The individual abruptly and violently attacked the female and struck her in the head with a knife, causing a laceration. The individual continued to run and then encountered another individual, a male Hispanic 61-year-old victim, and stabbed him in his left shoulder. The officers continued to give chase while they broadcast their location for additional units, and the individual was cornered in a parking lot nearby. The officers continued to give chase and gave multiple commands for the individual. The individual abruptly stopped and then immediately lunged at one of the officers, resulting in an officer-involved shooting. The individual was hospitalized and remains in stable but critical condition. Both the victims, all three victims that were in the incident and were stabbed by the individual, were released from the hospital. Once again, Force Investigation will continue to investigate thoroughly involving this incident. The final incident that occurred was an officer-involved shooting with hits that occurred May 5th at the area of Maple Avenue and South 6th Street. This occurred approximately a little past midnight at 0040 in the morning. Patrol officers assigned to Southeast identified an individual at a Hispanic and female male that were at an ATM. They attempted to communicate with the individual, Mr. Macias, at which time he entered his vehicle and fled. A short pursuit ensued and was believed during the foot pursuit, officers believed that Macias was armed with a female. The suspect fled in a white Mercedes, and a pursuit of a 415 man with a gun ensued by the officers. Macias was dropped off near the off-ramp to a freeway, and a foot pursuit ensued as the officers ordered him to stop. As the officers approached the individual, a struggle ensued, and Macias produced a handgun, and an officer-involved shooting occurred. Macias was struck by gunfire multiple times, and he was transported to a local hospital, where unfortunately he was pronounced deceased. A search of the area of the pursued Mercedes has been conducted and as of yet has not been located. One officer received lacerations to his left hand during this incident, and he received minor medical attention. Force Investigation will investigate this case and will do so aggressively. They did locate a loaded semi-automatic handgun that was recovered at the scene near the suspect. Year to date, we have had 9 officer-involved shootings in 2023, compared to 7 in 2022. The 4-year average remains at 9.75 with a reduction of 7.7%. Lastly, our personnel strength at this point, SWORD personnel deployed is 9,112, with our current authorities of 9,460 with a shortage of minus 348 officers. Lastly, our civilian workforce remains at 2,622, and our civilian authorities remain at 2,705 with a shortage of 83. This concludes my remarks, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I'll first go to Commissioner Shields. Any question for Chief Labraga?
Yes, thank you, Chief, for that detailed summary. I appreciate all of the community events that you summarized. I just have a question regarding the officer-involved shootings. I understand that Force Investigation will be, conducting a thorough investigation, and it'll be brought to the commission at some point for evaluation. When can we expect to see the release of the body-worn video footage?
The chief has made that commitment. As you know, we have 45 days to release it, and chief continues to release those videos within a 30-day period. Once the 72-hour brief is concluded, as long as there's no threats to the officers, that video is completed, and they'll produce it and release it to the public for transparency.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shields. Commissioner Suthers.
Thank you, Chief. Really appreciate the very comprehensive report. I understand that we had 26 new officers graduate from the academy. What's the average size of the academy class now?
Well, I will give you the breakup, Commissioner, of the most recent class as well. We just started a new class. Let me get those numbers for you. The last class that was just started was 22 officers. As you know, it's aggressively. I noticed that we did over the weekend some additional recruitment seminars over at Camp Pendleton. So they're reaching out to other locations, and most likely those locations at universities, colleges. So there's a very proactive effort by our recruitment efforts to target not only those communities outside the city, but also here within the city of LA as well.
Oh, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Soberoff.
No questions. Thank you. Good report. The numbers on recruitment, these classes need to be double or triple those sizes in order to meet the goals that we need.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Calanche.
Chief Labrada, I can barely see you. I have a couple of questions. One is about the, seems to be recurring school issues, right? Crime issues. How are we working with school police and LAUSD on some of these issues? And then the other question is around, I guess, good news that crime is down, right? And just your thoughts on like what is happening that is a good thing, right? That what are we doing or what's happening in our communities, or just any thoughts on the crime stats that are going in the right direction?
So the first question, Commissioner, good question regarding our involvement with school. As you know, school police as well has seen a reduction in staffing in many schools. However, the partnership that they have with the divisions, not only with community relations, but also the senior lead officers and just enforcement. We meet often with Chief Zipperman and his team on efforts, more importantly, for safe passages, but also efforts around the school. Tragically, the recent incidents involving the schools, as I mentioned, in LA High School, as well as the recent incident involving the individual who ran over the mother and the 9-year-old. Those are incidents of awareness, but also the importance to working with our city family for improvements around those schools. That's the important part. I mentioned environmental design at the businesses, the retails, but we also should look at those at places where children are attending, places of worship as well, crosswalks, locations that are affecting traffic flow, and more importantly, fixing those areas there for safety and improving the environment in those schools. Those are all discussions that are occurring between the school police as well as our officers. And we ask each division, Chief Moore has given that mission to those divisions to work along those schools, not only for LA Unified Schools, but many of the charter schools that are within our city to ensure the safety of those students. In regards to the violence, I think the important part of the aspect, and I mentioned it earlier about that partnership, not only with community and also with our business partners. Chief Moore has always highlighted the importance of having partnerships with our community. You know, it's not a job that the police department does alone. It has to be individuals, residents, committed also to the public safety reporting crime, whether it's anonymous or directly to our officers, but also in partnership. You know, one of the things that we've always highlighted is we can't wait till an incident happens before we start working with our residents. And it's important for our residents to get involved, not only give guidance to our officers of those violence that are occurring around those communities, but also have that relationship so when those incidents do happen, our officers are already in communication with those residents and businesses. And then lastly, I think the importance of a lot of the work that's being done in the community organizations, neighborhood councils, as well as other residents through neighborhood watch groups to improve the safety through cameras, through other means that are helping our investigators solve crimes much quicker. In many of these cases that I've highlighted today, as well as others, our ability to solve those crimes has been through cameras, through community involvement, through participation by residents providing information, such as the LA High School incident involving the stabbing. A lot of the residents and parents and children came forward and provided information to our detectives. So it's a collaborative effort in working with our residents and providing information. but also holding ourselves accountable to make our community and businesses and homes safer.
Thank you. I have actually a follow-up. So I know that in our CSP areas, there's like safe passages that we work with our schools in those CSP areas or the feeder patterns for those schools, for those communities. I'm wondering, and I don't know this, and I don't know if you do, but I'm wondering how many safe passages programs we have in our department. So that I would just be interested to know, because I know in the CSP sites, they do exist, but I don't know if senior leads are working on those in other areas. Just something, maybe you can let us know at some point, or the chief can let us know, where we have actual like safe passages programs, just to get a sense of like where they're happening and if there's any gaps or where we can expand those programs.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I kind of have been tracking somewhat, the city budget process, and I know that in the budget hearings, there's been, I think it was Councilwoman Rodriguez put in is requesting some funding to be set aside for like those commercial areas where like smash and grabs have been happening. So just something for us to track to ensure that does happen. I'm sure our ledge staff is on top of it, but I thought it was something that was really important that we provide more safety around those commercial areas that have seen like more crime as a result of, robberies or like follow home and all that stuff. I just wanted to bring that up because I noticed that was something that was discussed in council.
Absolutely, Commissioner. And so I'll follow up on the safe passages to provide an updated through our Community Engagement Office of Operations to provide that information and continue to expand that. I know the chief has highlighted that as one of his
Yeah.
important topics of discussion. And then also regards to the smash and grab, I have seen efforts to increase our footbeats. Footbeats have always been a good source of deterrence and more importantly, a trust building with businesses, but also with residents when they see officers walking in the community. So it is a helpful tool that is definitely has helped us in the past to reduce violence.
Yeah, and I think that Councilwoman Rodriguez is trying to put some money aside to make sure that continues. Yeah, something for us to follow to make sure it happens. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Calanche. At this time, we're going to go to item number 2 on the agenda, public comment. Madam Secretary.
Our first speaker is Jonathan Foster.
Hello, Jonathan Foster. I was going to start with this, and this is not in condemn. This is just, I've got to play this.
Get your hands up now! Fucking hands up! Face the fucking wall! Face the fucking wall! You sure I'll fucking kill you? Get the fuck on the ground! Get him on his knees! Get on the fucking ground! Hands on your head! Hook him up! You move, I'll fucking blow your fucking head off! Do you understand? Fucking blow your fucking head off!
Different arrest.
Don't you fucking move! I don't got nothing, son! Hey! You gotta talk like that!
She said you don't have to talk like that. Here's another one that's upsetting.
Validate that is talk to somebody, whoever shot somebody. Anytime we have these closed sessions, and during the closed sessions, there's no secret that we adjudicate cases. Either the training's wrong, but when people in the same circumstance with the same training respond the exact same way at the same time, I can understand that.
So you get to decide that it's all right. That's only one person decides that these kinds of things are okay. How about
Is
this?
that our deterrence has to be that there is also accountability, that there will be there's consequences.
So some of these consequences that I seen kind of go out the window is these MOUs, and they need an audit. The MOUs, they need to be audited. What do they state? Nobody in the public knows. I'd like to see the last 200 MOUs, or how the public audit Eileen Decker's cover up. So one of the things, though, it's tough on you, Steve, huh? You're not the president anymore. You're trying to tell Briggs what to do, Brigonometer. Trying to run the meeting. It's tough, man. Man, I tell you, I had wanted to do a Steve Soberoff is dead party before he's dead, before the pandemic. And I never got to do that one. But I still want to. And so if you want all this accountability, don't you think you ought to check out the MOUs? And don't you think that that's been like the thing with Grosario Mac or the people with fake guns, bike parts, this kinds of stuff? This is what is actually just inflaming all the public to be so mad at you. Where was another one I heard? They like to defund. You know, the reason people want to abolish and defund is because you don't have any accountability on several interactions. There's no accountability. You've stiffed the public. You've killed and murdered. These oopums have to be addressed. And the audits of the MOUs and these de novo hearings need to be addressed. They're not.
Next, we have Betty Lay.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
Agenda items, Assistant Chief report and public comment.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you. First, good morning, everybody, and I appreciate Assistant Chief's report this morning. I also want to make it known that I support agenda items A, 3A, and 3B. And on public comment, I'm very disappointed in our city attorney regarding neighborhood prosecutor program. She has not been honest. What she said she'll do, she's not doing. And I also think it's embarrassing and offensive for all those in public comment that have to cuss to get their word across. That's just ridiculous. And with that, I'd like to tell everyone to stay healthy, stay safe, and happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. I yield the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you.
The next speaker, Hamid Khan.
I'm just sitting here watching this civilian review board and what their role is, and thinking about this expose that the LA Times did earlier this week about this SWAT mafia. And not a peep out of this so-called civilian oversight board. I mean, just last year in the review, the LAPD said that SWAT, and I quote, no culture of violence. That's exactly what they said. There is no culture of violence. But here you have a sergeant who is a 10-year SWAT veteran under oath is speaking about a culture of extreme brutality and complete impunity. Impunity. How they operate with complete impunity. So now this is what we should expect from these folks. Exactly. Like, absolutely. I mean, this is, and that's what Jonathan Foster was also lifting as well, that this is just like the dead weight that we carry constantly with us. Which brings me to another issue with a lot of pomp and show that Moore was on camera about the new Axon Fleet 3 system, which has been now this triangulation is going to happen with technology where you have body cameras, license plate readers, dash cams, and we know the history of dash cams, how 98 of those patrol cars, the antenna were broken by the LAPD officers. And so now this is what we said in our 2015 report, that body cameras are an empty reform to expand the surveillance state, that there's no conversation about a 2019 study which looked at this empirical data, 70 empirical studies of body-worn camera, that although officers and citizens are generally supportive, but they have had no statistical significant or consistent effects on most measures of officers or on misconduct. But what it has done is that it has tremendously streamlined the LAPD's multiple systems of surveillance, which a whole lot of data goes into evidence.com, which, by the way, the president of Axon, Rick Smith, and I look for his quote, but I don't have it right now, is just basically salivating on that how they experiment with that data on people's lives. Lastly, I come back to the pictures, the same Watch the Watchers stuff. Here's Al Libredo, who earlier published the photos of the new recruits with their families. And this was all on Vimeo.com with all of this pomp and show again. So now when the people want to do that, you know, it's all of a sudden we are endangering families. When the people want to do that, all of a sudden we are, and in their filing at the esteemed city attorney's office, they say that we are a threat to the United States for publishing the photos of public employees working for public institutions, paid by public dollars, serving the public in their capacity as public employees. Dang. Okay, well, our fight continues, and we will abolish you. Not now, but generationally you will be gone.
Next, we have Philip Tabby. Philip Tabby, you're on.
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I want to first offer my sincere condolences to the Bachman family and friends. Mike, you got rid of a senior lead officer for speaking truth to power. You got rid of a captain for speaking truth to power. But with God as my witness, this body will never get rid of the people for speaking truth to power. I support our LAPD and law enforcement. I do not support Chief Moore. I do not support soft on crime Monica Rodriguez. The two of you are destroying Los Angeles. I watched the budget hearing on April 27th, and what a show it was. Mike, Monica controls you like her little puppy, and Monica's attitude was more disgusting than the trash on our streets. Mike, you speak about the CSP Bureau like it was your idea. It wasn't. It was forced upon you so you could keep your job. I even believe you were against creating that bureau, but now I believe that Calanche and Rodriguez are attempting to take over the CSPs with their social workers. You know, follow the money. Calanche, are you a part of or in charge of Legacy LA, a nonprofit who will profit from this kind of deal? You know, if it's true, you need to recuse yourself from any votes on this matter, just like a past commissioner has done. Or just do us a favor, Calanche, and resign. I'm even surprised you're here today. 3 meetings in a row. I wonder if you're going to make it 4 for 4 next week. On last week's agenda, this commission talked about senior lead officers. It's a shame soft on crime Monica Rodriguez gets involved moving our senior lead officers. Recently, a CSP captain had to tone up an officer because Monica made a phone call. Mind you, he's our only CSP officer here that's African American. That poor captain had to comply because they were afraid if they didn't, they'd get smithed. And now Monica wants $200,000 for general services at her council offices, $300,000, $350,000 for PAL's mission, but nothing for Foothill. Doesn't the commission take that money out of their own pocket to begin with? But you know what? Because of Monica, you have docked an officer's rating for telling the truth. You demoted the best captain from Foothill has ever seen in a long time. Corruption, guess who's also complicit? Mark Smith. Hey, buddy, got your email. Unfounded, huh? I want the details of this investigation. How do you complete an investigation without interviewing key people like the main one involved, Captain Smith? So, Mike, I was in Encinitas 2 weekends ago while you were drinking it up with the deputy city attorney again, you know, another credit union trip. Where were you when the officer's finger got bitten off? Was it just like when you were in Idaho and your 3 officers got shot? Los Angeles deserves a sober chief of police who's available always. You know, what is that video that I have of you drunk in Vegas with the same city attorney you were with 2 weekends ago?
Okay, thank you.
The next speaker is Zach Sherwin on all items.
This commission is a charade. To speak to the only agenda item that's transpired so far, why is the first thing that we hear in the chief's report an update on the police unity bicycle ride and the community events that Chief Moore has attended in the past week? With all the things that are happening in this city and the issues pertaining to LAPD that could be addressed in that, that opportunity in time, the fact that that's what we're treated to a presentation on first, it kind of boggles the mind. But I guess, we know that Labrada is a flunky who's enthralled to the toxic institution that has absorbed him. But the five of you are different. You're supposed to be outside of the LAPD. You're here to provide oversight. You're the civilian's voice in police affairs, according to the website. And yet, week after week, you sit there silently, scowling. Or maybe you ask a question about academy class size like Commissioner Suthers did, and then Assistant Chief Labrada just happens to have the exact figures he was asked about right in front of him. It doesn't contribute to an appearance that there's like robust debate and holding to account and asking the tough questions that the citizen's voice you are supposed to be. That's not the impression that it gives off. Commissioner Kalanche used the pronoun our to talk about LAPD. You frequently, as a matter of course, use pronouns like our and us and what are we doing. And that's a striking thing to hear as a member of the public who thinks that you're supposed to be outside of the police department and providing oversight, and yet you're using pronouns like that. Well, yeah, you get it. A couple weeks ago, we heard Commissioner Kalanche say, let's talk about having every speaker who comes down have an opportunity to speak, who makes the trouble to physically come. Commissioners Suthers and Shields, it was, I believe, before you were on the commission. But that was something that was said in here. It did happen. We could go back and consult the record. Shouldn't it be the case that people who make the effort to come downtown and make their way into the awful environment that we're in right now, people who do that with their morning on a Tuesday should actually have the opportunity to speak? It's like that comment just got wafted away in the wind. It happened, and then we never hear any follow-up about it. And then, the process continues in the exact same way that it's been continuing, but that it wasn't before the pandemic. Why won't you speak to this? Why won't you inform us what the basis of your decision is, at least? I mean, then we'd have something to say about that. But you're just part of this commission, and I'll end my comments the way I began them by just pointing out what a charade you are. I yield the rest of my time to today's meeting.
Next, we have Javier Hermosillo. Javier, you're on.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure where to begin, other than excellent report from Assistant Chief Labrada, who I think gives us assurance that this department has a number of people who. Can you hear me? Okay. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. I had a hard time. The mute button was still on for the last half minute. I don't know if you heard me, but I was saying that I was glad to hear the report from Chief Labrada in the absence of Chief Moore, because it gives reassurance that we have a department with a strong cadre of leaders who are on top of everything that's going on. And I know a lot of the callers like to attack our department and the chief, but we do have incredibly capable people at all levels. And as somebody has said before, we have to recruit from the human race, and so people sometimes fail us. The main point that I wanted to address is have the commission take a look at what the department is in terms of response to Code 3 calls. In the last week and a half, I've been at 2 events in 2 different divisions, during which calls went out, not connected to those events, but something else. And multiple units, in one case, 6 or 7 units that I personally saw responding Code 3 and going through a very laid back type of environment where people were just, casually walking, some with their kids, some were elderly. And I thought the policy was that the lead unit goes code 3. And maybe because of the increase in crime, maybe the rules are being adjusted accordingly. But in one particular case, because it was such a laid back environment, and all of a sudden, units, come through there, at the speed that they need to use to get to a tough call. I became concerned. I had to pull my wife back. She was crossing the street because this unit came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, went code 3. And so it's a great department. It's under a lot of attack for reasons that don't make sense. But I do have a question about the policy of the lead unit going code 3, the one that gets to send the call. And now in this particular case, I counted at least 5 or 6 units that were going code 3 and racing down, instead of a main street, a side street that was full of people at an event that takes place every month in that particular division. But it's a great LAPD. Thank you so much for your work.
The next speaker is Gina Viola on items 1, 2, and 3.
So crime is down again. How do you continue to make the case that this department needs to grow? How do you continue to take the majority of the city's budget when you don't keep us safe from road rage? Road rage is a direct result from a stressed, under-resourced community. You did not prevent 2 high school students from being stabbed. Instead, you boast that there's a robust investigation after the fact. Folks wouldn't be out stabbing each other if this department wasn't hoarding all of the city's resources constantly. An $87 million increase to your budget next year when crime is down and we have less cops? Do the math. It doesn't add up. Even the LAPPL has named at least, I think, 20 things cops don't need to respond to, but where's the funding that goes with that? Instead, you want to make sure that, Monica Rodriguez's request for a little bit of smash and grab protection is earmarked in this enormous budget that none of us ever get to see. Shame on this body of folks who do nothing but substantiate everything this department does. This room is nothing more than an LAPD PR stunt. That's what it is. Soboroff continuing to be here is an affront to the entire community. George Bush Sr., back in the 90s, said Tupac Shakur's music made him sick. And when I listened to it, it was the exact same tone Soboroff had when he used those exact same words about a black father, a civilian who was here to participate. Right? You're the civilian voice in policing affairs. He's here to participate, and that makes Soboroff sick. How is it that he's still sitting here? You need to step down. And the fact that the rest of you don't demand that means you all need to go too. Yes. This room is a joke. You clearly have a script to read from. Many of us, actually attend theater and stuff, so it's really obvious to see when you ask these well-rehearsed questions with the well-rehearsed answers. Is that what you do all week, is study the script to come in here and read from? The fact that none of you asked a single question about the LA Times article on the SWAT mafia, right? We have LAPD gangs just like the LASD has. And here it is, out in print, and not a single one of you asked a question about it. You are in no way, shape, or form any kind of oversight. As has been mentioned before, you clearly reference yourself as police. Soboroff's in an article saying he sides with police. This is not oversight. It has never been oversight. And the reason that people want to defund the police, abolish the police, is because it has never been accountable. And the fact that you sit here week after week and rubber stamp everything that this department does makes you so complicit in that. Shameful.
Next, we have Mr. G. Mr. G, you're on.
Yeah, okay, I'll speak on all of the items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
All right, so let's start off with the chief's report. The chief's report should be limited to 3 minutes total, or if the chief wants to go longer than 3 minutes, we should all be allowed to match the amount of time that the chief got. So if the chief takes 15 minutes, we should all get 15 minutes each. You should hear from everyone who speaks. The chief mentioned today that crime is down, yet you seem to want more cops. I don't know why you need more cops when crime is down in pretty much all areas. It seems to me like in any, and pretty much viewing this from any perspective, why would the answer here be more cops? Like that doesn't even make sense. But we know why you need more cops because because the point of cops is not to keep people safe, it's to criminalize and harass ordinary citizens. You mentioned that 2 cops were killed last year, but yet you never mentioned that the cops killed numerous people every year. So you should talk about that and how normal people are much more likely to be killed by police than the police are likely to be killed by normal people. Moving on to the consent items. So let's start with, we have multiple donations from the Police Foundation. This is the LA equivalent to the Atlanta Police Foundation, which is funding Cop City in Atlanta that you probably want to send LAPD cops to. So we have thousands of dollars for lasers, and you have $20,000 for canine care in the Metro Division. So note that the police keeping dogs and forcing them to be cops is animal abuse. Yeah, it's absolutely. I'm also going to continue to note. I'm also going to note that Steve, what you said a couple weeks ago was really racist. Jason's allowed to bring his baby. That should not scare you. So I was fuck you, Steve. Yeah, I'm also gonna note that yesterday I had like some helicopters flying over my house like all day. It's giving me a serious headache, and I had to like go out because I just couldn't handle the continuous helicopter noise. So fuck the helicopters. Why are the helicopters ever flying to like Santa Barbara? Yeah, so let's get rid of the helicopters. Let's get rid of the police. And let's get rid of Michael Moore.
Okay, and our last in-person card is for Megan.
Hello, I've been coming to these meetings for a month now. Nothing has made me more anti-police than being in these meetings. Citizens' voice in law enforcement, there's more police in here than citizens. Maybe that's because the meetings are at 9:30 on a Tuesday. Statistically, the most policed people are poor and working class people. How are they supposed to get here at 9:30 on a Tuesday? How are they supposed to feel comfortable coming here, talking about their criticisms of the police, when there's 20 police officers with their guns in this room? It's ridiculous. None of you ask any questions. I've been coming here for a month. None of you have ever asked any hard questions, ever. Not one question of substance, not one time. In the report, 9 officer shootings this year. We only had 7 total last year. It's May. There's already 9. You don't have any questions about that? There is no accountability in Los Angeles for the police. You know where the accountability is coming from? It's from the people who come up here and actually show up and ask those tough questions. It's coming from Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. It's coming from Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. That's the only reason that I even know about any of the fucked up shit that this department does just on a weekly basis. It is exhausting. Last week it was 200 kids who were abused by one of your administrators. This week it's the SWAT mafia, where people who are paid almost $500,000 in benefits, overtime, and salary are routinely ordering the murder of unarmed mentally ill citizens. To quote Zach, it boggles the mind. I'm literally speechless. Crime is down, and Commissioner Kalanche wants to know what we're doing right. Again, noting those pronouns that you feel like you are a part of the police department. Maybe what you're doing right is that there's less police officers. Maybe that's why crime is down. And I guess for my last thing, I just want to renew the call that anybody who shows up down here should be allowed to speak, per your comment for a few weeks ago. I guess that just sort of drifted away. Thanks.
Next, we have T.
Hello?
Hi, what items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, first off, I don't appreciate how y'all are regulating this Zoom. I think we need an inquiry on how y'all are regulating this Zoom and who gets to speak and who doesn't. My hand's been up since 9:27 a.m. as well as last week. I never got called. An officer discharge. You know, these happen frequently, unintentional discharges, but Steve Soboroff wants to give subsidies so police that don't even live in our communities could have housing here when we have a housing crisis. And y'all are killing homeless people. One of the McBride family killed a homeless lady at the beginning of the year. We'd like accountability for that murder, as well as for Daniel Hernandez. But we know their father works for the LAPPL, so there won't be much accountability there. So the intentional discharges, yeah, we don't feel safe with police live in our communities and give them subsidized housing. Unacceptable when we have a housing crisis. In addition,
I think the call dropped. Hold, give me 1 second.
yes, so I was just kicked off. I don't know how that happened. But then you went on to talk about fallen police officers. And you said Officer Tipping passed away. Wasn't he murdered by your own department? So no, he didn't pass away. Officer Tipping was murdered. So yeah, how about some accountability on that? Steve Soboroff should step down. He should not even be on this commission. It's unconscionable that he would make a statement about a Black father and a Black baby. He should not even be on this commission. I want to call for immediate removal of Steve Soboroff. And he's a conflict of interest because of his involvement with the Weingart Foundation. He needs to go. The rest of this commission, you also, we can't really continue to approve this body because y'all are complicit. You are complicit with state sanctioned violence. And we really need citizen voices because all y'all are is a rubber stamp body for the police department and the LAPPL. No to every agenda item that you continue to ask money for. Okay, y'all are getting like a 87 million increase by the mayor that we denounce. We don't want that 87 million. We want that 87 million to go in our communities. We want unarmed responses. We want non-law enforcement responses. When we say defund the police, we mean fund our communities because resources is what keeps us safe. Okay, we need housing. We need people that are trained mental health workers that aren't law enforcement, that are unarmed to respond to our community members that need mental health services. We really need housing, okay? These are crises, public health crises going on in our city, and you continue to cipher the budget, okay? And we want real accountability for the murders of our...
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Angelina.
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I support LAPD and we need laws to be enforced or else our society will crumble. Thank you to each officer out there working hard and trying to keep us safe. We see you and recognize you. LAPD cops are not racist. Just yesterday, I saw 2 LAPD officers handcuffing a man at our local gas station. Guess what? Those 2 officers are Hispanic and brown skin, and the one they were cuffing and pressing against the cop car, he was as white as can be. So let's stop with this racist nonsense and focus on reality. Thank you, LAPD, for signing up to do this job when so many don't want to enter this profession anymore. Each graduating class is averaging under 30 new officers, which is not enough. It must be difficult for you to do your job, especially when leadership doesn't support you, you're understaffed, and your hands are continually tied by a woke and perverse city council and other government entities. These decision makers are destroying our city. Chief Moore and you commissioners need to take a stand against this evil before it's too late. Crime is worse than what your crime stats show because so many don't report crimes. But one thing we know is arrests are continually down. It's down 26.2%. Why? It's because the law is not being enforced. We want more arrests. We want more consequences for criminals. We don't want empty threats. Our businesses are suffering with the onslaught of brazen thefts, many times in broad daylight. Recently, our local business owners joined together and made their own police force and hired private security, especially at nighttime, because there isn't enough LAPD patrol along the foothill corridor in Sunland to Hunga. Many of these businesses have been burglarized multiple times with their windows smashed in and merchandise stolen. One local store had $1 million worth of collectibles stolen. We are in an even worse situation as of yesterday, effective immediately. I am outraged that City Attorney Heidi Feldstein Soto made the decision to remove all neighborhood prosecutors from all 21 LAPD divisions. How does that make our city safer? It doesn't. We are losing. I was told by an officer that now we only get our neighborhood prosecutor for 2 measly hours a week. How is that serving and helping our community? We pay taxes for what? This is going to make officers' jobs harder because they can make all the arrests they want, but without the prosecutor, there are no teeth to convince the judge why that criminal is a danger to society, and these lawbreakers will be back out on our streets, just like a revolving door. Our neighborhood prosecutor was an asset to our community because he was always at our neighborhood watch, coffee with the cops, CPAB, and neighborhood council meetings. He was able to answer our questions, oftentimes better than the cops because he understood the different elements of the law. Can the police commission give a report to City Attorney Soto explaining the benefit and need for these neighborhood prosecutors to stay at the LAPD divisions? Speaking of corrupt politicians, Monica's advertising slogan was invest in youth, not police. I have children and I'm very aware of the many opportunities there are for the youth in our city. One idea is for each one of us to volunteer and come along these youth organizations.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Jamie Cusick.
Hi, all items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
So on the agenda today is another goddamn donation from the LA Police Foundation, a truly hilariously corrupt institution, for $19K for your air support division. Why? Please explain to me how the fuck that's necessary. The LAPD helicopter fleet is already bigger than that of any other city in the entire fucking world. You guys already have 18 helicopters, and you have 2 of them flying over the city 20 hours a day, every day, at a monetary cost of at least $27 million a year, not to mention the fucking planetary cost. Any given average police chopper uses the same amount of gas as 73 average cars. Between 2019 and 2020, you guys released over 11,000 metric tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. So don't you dare try to claim that your air support division is saving lives. You are literally killing all of us via this unspeakable contribution to climate change just by putting your officers up in the sky. And literally for what? It's not just that they don't solve or prevent crime once they're up there, because not one of your divisions has ever solved or prevented a single crime in the history of its existence, but also your choppers are used to pretty much constantly disrupt Black and brown neighborhoods with the explicit goal of surveillance and terrorization. Just to remind you, back in 2021, LAPD opened fire on Samuel Soto because he happened to be evincing behavior that was not a harm to anyone else around him, and the officers who confronted him, in their infinite wisdom and humanity and expert knowledge of psychology, decided was erratic, which is just a classic instance of the racist, fear-based trigger friendliness that is the LAPD trademark, and obviously something that never should have happened in the first place. But even so, Samuel Soto would probably still be alive today if a police copter hadn't swarmed onto the scene and been hovering overhead throughout the fallout from this initial shooting, making it impossible for these violent, cowardly pieces of shit on the ground to hear what they were yelling at each other. And of course, they ended up shooting him 3 more times, while the only thing in his hand was a fucking cell phone. He passed away 5 days later, and last year, you commissioners ruled that murder was in accordance with department policies. Of course you did. Literally all you motherfuckers as a governing body do is evince as much utter contempt for the lives of Black, brown, and poor people as you possibly can. The fact that you're supposed to be an ethical board, let alone an ethical board that is supposed to represent my voice in police affairs, is disgusting. You all make me sick. This board is a sham. This meeting is a sham. Extend public comment and let each of us get the chance to drill out at least as much word salad as the fucking Chiefs report amounts to every week. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Steve Rogers.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I'd like to start off by acknowledging National Police Memorial Day, which is actually May 15th, and thank, in remembrance and with honor, all police officers that have given the ultimate sacrifice. And I ask you to join me in a moment of silence to remember their sacrifice and their families and comrades. Moment of silence. Thank you. God bless the LAPD. I'm now going to read, if you don't know, St. Michael is the patron saint of police officers. I am reading from a mass card from Officer Baltimore J. Sandoval, but this is for all officers. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our defense against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and the other evil spirits who prowl about the world for the ruin of souls. Amen. And that was said for all police officers, all law enforcement. Now, I'd like to go on to last week. I didn't get a chance to speak because there were people who were disruptive, and it took up part of the 45 minutes. And unlike in the sport of soccer, when there's penalty, when there's an injury or there's penalty time added at the end of the game, there was no time added at the end of the game. I know that at least 3 people were unable to speak. So if you could please enforce the rules, the law 403 PC for disruptions, please, Commissioner President Briggs, that's your responsibility. And yet an arrest can be made in the presence of a police officer, a misdemeanor arrest. The chief is there, the sergeant at arms is there, and we need to bring order back to the meetings. The SLOW program presentation last week was excellent. Commander Billy Brockway talked about communication, and communication is very important. Each area has a basic car. Each basic car area should have a SLOW guided meeting with the community to maintain continual communication. At the end of that meeting, a community critique form should be filled out by the SLOW and made available to the public online. So people who cannot make it to the meetings, and all people can actually see what is going on in the community policing area. Communication is important. People regularly say they want more police, but the public has no control over that. And what they do want is to know their police. We need to have a good relationship. Don't listen to the Bolshevist lying Marxists, that the dedicated minority that shows up with their ideology. Policing and public safety should not be ideology.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have caller ending 1264. Caller ending 1264, you're on. Okay, we'll move on to the next caller. Mr. C.
This is the last caller, Madam Speaker, Madam Secretary.
I'm muted. Sorry, I was muted. Sorry. Good morning. I'd like to start by saying global warming is a myth. and climate change is just a political talking point by the Democrats. That being said, on June 20th, 2020, an anti-Catholic crime occurred in downtown Los Angeles. A monument to the great saint, Junipero Serra, was torn down by a savage mob. A monument that stood since 1934. I'm not a trained investigator, just a non-police officer. And in 30 minutes of research, I found a lot of information of complicit organizations and groups that were involved in this and deliberately not filming of the people that were doing it down in downtown Los Angeles, of these fake indigenous groups. And I say fake because the actual indigenous groups that support Junipero Serra were good Catholic people that supported him. So that being said, going forward in this new lawless Los Angeles, it sounds like, if any citizen or myself included don't like something in Los Angeles, a monument or a statue, it looks like we can just tear it down as long as nobody films it. That's kind of a crummy way to go forward in Los Angeles, especially if it's a religious statue. So if a Star of David's put up, or maybe even a statue to a great imam, or even a statue to some other religious leader, maybe a Buddhist one, I can just tear it down as long as nobody films me. I'm good. Nobody saw the crime, right? So that being said, I'd like to say I appreciate the good law enforcement officers who actually are law-abiding themselves. I appreciate you. I'm sorry for all the officers that have been killed in the line of duty. We all mourn with you. It's sad to hear about it, especially these young officers that are being killed in Los Angeles. That's not good. That's all I have.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Secretary. At this time, we're going to go to item 3 on the agenda, the consent agenda items. Are there any commissioners that want to comment on any of those items? Seeing none, I move that we adopt items 3A and B. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. At this time, we're going to go to item 4A on the agenda, the department's presentation with respect to Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Is Deputy Chief Blake Chow here? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Chief Chow.
Good morning.
Commander Tom.
Good morning. Shall we begin?
Please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, President Briggs, Commissioners, Chief Lambrata. Thank you for allowing us time to briefly discuss the AAPI Heritage Month. I'm Deputy Chief Blake Chow from Operations West Bureau, also the AAPI liaison, and in that role I represent the department to ensure that we are in the forefront of working with our diverse AAPI communities and bringing them together and ensuring our communities are safe. And also working with our other law enforcement partners such as the DA and CA to ensure that AAPI crime issues are given their due diligence. So our presentation today is going to be twofold. First, we're going to attempt to kind of tie in the AAPI LAPD community efforts longstanding efforts into our AAPI representation in our ranks. And that'll be discussed in further detail by Commander Tom, representing the Law Enforcement Association of Asian Pacifics. But the bottom line is that our community looks at us and really wants to see themselves. And our ability to outreach and engage is much easier when we look like those that we serve. So I always like to start my presentation. If you'll indulge me, I want to kind of tell you my family story, but I promise you it'll be brief. My grandmother came to this country in 1913, and she took a steamship from China to Angel Island, which took 4 weeks. And in the end, my grandparents, who had no education, became farmers up in the Sacramento Valley area, and they had 8 children. 4 of my uncles served in every branch of the armed services during World War II and the Korean War. And the reason I bring this up is because everybody in this country shares the same story. We are all descendants of immigrants who overcame overwhelming odds to be successful. And as we celebrate AAPI Heritage Month, we celebrate and we need to recognize the millions of stories such as this, because members of the AAPI community have been making amazing contributions to the city, the state, and the nation for really hundreds and hundreds of years, and are responsible for the cultural and economic vibrancy of our country. Yet, over the last several years, there is a little bit of a darker side to this that we must acknowledge, I think, if we're going to move forward as a society. And right now, unfortunately, we live in a society that has become very divided, where people and groups target each other simply because of who they are. And just in the last 3 months here in Los Angeles, we've had examples of 2 communities who were targeted simply because of who they are. One was in the Jewish community and the shooting of the 2 individuals on Pico. Thank God the suspect was caught through the due diligence of West LA and Major Crimes Division. And then more recently, we had a vandalism at the Islamic Center in Olympic. Unfortunately, there the suspect was also caught. But in the last several years, 2 things have really happened, I think, that have exacerbated this problem. Number one, we are in a very divisive political environment right now, and then social media. We have an environment where people who have a propensity for hate congregate and exchange misinformation and then act out. And really, nobody knows this better than our AAPI community. With the advent of COVID, AAPI members began to become the victims of misguided individuals who blame them for COVID hitting our shores. And what happened is we saw an increase in hate crimes in 2021 and an increase in hate incidents in 2021, right after COVID hit. But yet we know everything isn't being reported. When you look at our statistics, with 40 hate crimes against AAPI community members being reported in 2021, how is it even possible that we could have that few in a city of 4 million people? So we stand next to our AAPI partners because we know that we are stronger together. We stand together to fight hate, and we know that until society has a united voice and expresses our intolerance for hate, nothing is ever going to change. To achieve closer ties with the AAPI community and get to that point, the LAPD has, number one, built relationships with which to unify our voice with our AAPI partners. We've engaged in outreach, which brings our AAPI groups who have typically not been at the table to the table and be partners with us. And we've also done more outreach into our AAPI community for inclusion of other AAPI members. And then finally, we've engaged in education, which I think is very important, so we can teach our other AAPI community about hate crimes, how to report and why to report. Just in the last 3 years, I'll go over this very quickly, but since COVID, we've engaged in AAPI symposiums and forums, not only the chiefs, but the ones we do in West Bureau. We've done 2. We did one in May in 22 and one in October 22 for West Bureau. We've got the Korean American experience, in which we bring new officers that are assigned to West Bureau to be educated by community members so that they have more tools with which to deal with the members of the Korean community when they go out on radio calls. We do that 5 times a year. We usually have about 20 students in that. We've done 16 AAPI seminars, panels, and conferences on Zoom since 2019, where we've had community members from all over just not only meet subject matter experts, but we talk about hate crimes and what to look for, what to do, why to report, and why it needs to be reported. We were intimately involved in the LA for All campaign, which was spearheaded by Capri Maddox and the LA Civil and Human Rights Equity Department that you've probably seen the posters and things like that. We were intimately involved in that. And we've engaged in some community cleanup. So all these things we've done is really to try to bring our AAPI community partners closer to us as a police department and kind of give a face to the LAPD. But before I turn over the presentation to Commander Tom, I wanted to kind of go back and recall a LEAP meeting that I went to in 1992 when I was a young police officer. I was a young police officer and I attended my first LEAP meeting in Chinatown. And after the meeting, I remember standing in the parking lot in Chinatown at 10 p.m. and I was talking to, he was then a sergeant, but he retired as Deputy Chief Terry Hara. And I asked Terry, I said, why don't we have any Asian command staff officers on this department? Because at the time, the highest Asian command staff officer we had was a lieutenant, and that was Paul Kim. Some of you may know him. And Terry said to me, he goes, Blake, wait, we have to wait here, or just wait. We will have to work our way through the ranks because we're just being hired right now. And as you're going to see with Commander Tom and his presentation with LEAP, Terry Hara was absolutely right. It's completely different than it was back in the 1990s when I came on. So, John, I'll hand it over to you for your LEAP presentation.
Thank you, sir. So my name is Commander Jonathan Tom. I'm Assistant Commanding Officer of Operations West Bureau, and I'm the current president of Law Enforcement Association of Asian Pacifics. With me here, we'll start with Joyce Kano, who's in the back over there. She's so shy, as you know, but she didn't want to sit up here, but we have to recognize her as our first female Asian American Pacific Islander officer in the history of LAPD. Came on in 1967. To my right is retired Detective Ben Lee, who's also an active reserve. That's why he's wearing his uniform. Came on in 1977. Retired Lieutenant Russ Wong, hired in 1981. He is the great-grandson of Officer Lung Yep, who was our first Asian American Pacific Islander officer. And then retired Lieutenant Mike Ying, who was hired in 1886. All three of them were co-founders of LEAP, along with many others, but also, importantly for us, they were all past presidents of the organization. So because it's Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, we thought it's important to bring back some of the people that really were responsible for much of our heritage. So I do have several board members that are here in attendance. I'm not going to call them all out, but if they'd like to stand and be recognized, they can do so. But also I want to point out NAPOA President, National Asian Peace Officer Association President, Detective 2, Simone Bank-Versai is here in the audience. And she's the national president of the National Asian Peace Officer Association. Again, that's the parent organization. So we have a great representation nationally as well. So history and purpose of LEAP. LEAP was founded in 1991 by a group of AAPI officers in Southern California as a fraternal organization to share innovative ideas and friendship in support of its interests of the diverse membership. Our goal is to educate our members, prepare them for promotional opportunities, and advocate for them. And LEAP strives to highlight the significant contributions and talent that its members offer to the field of law enforcement. We currently have over 250 members, and that comes from a diverse cross-section. So we're proud to say our membership is not only AAPI, it's many different ethnicities because we all support each other. That's a theme that you'll see later on. Our mission is to promote diversity within the law enforcement community and to assist in opening doors for advancement through leadership, training, education, and mentorship. We actively work in partnership and collaboration with all of the affinity groups. So we really believe that all of us working together supports all of us. There's the old saying, rising tide floats all boats. That's been famously said by many politicians. In researching that, I found out that that comes from 16th century China. It was a proverb that was said, so it's kind of coincidental that that happens that we're talking about this during AAPI Heritage Month. So we can go over a lot of this, but essentially AAPI Heritage Month, Congress had approved that in 1992. It started in 1978 as a week. And it commemorates the Japanese Americans that came in May of 1843 and the Chinese Americans that contributed to the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in May of 1869. And the AAPI, what does it mean? All people of Asian American or Pacific Islander ancestry who trace their origins to the countries, states, jurisdictions, and/or the diasporic communities of these geographic regions. So here in California, specifically in America, we often think of AAPI as Southeast Asians, but really, this really encompasses the entire continent, and we've recently added many members that are Persian background, Pakistani, Indian, Malaysian, et cetera. One of the things we want to talk about is that to look to the future, we really have to recognize the past, and unfortunately, sometimes it's a dark past. It's not comfortable to talk about, but in 1871, 2 years after the formation of the LAPD, it was reported that LAPD officers stood by as a group of approximately 500 people in a mob descended upon Los Angeles' original Chinatown, and they essentially beat and hung 18 ethnic Chinese. This was approximately 10% of the entire population of Chinese in the city at that time. That group of 500 that I mentioned as the mob, they represented approximately 10% of the entire population of the city at that time as well. Juxtapose that story and that image with this year's Golden Dragon Day Parade. So we had a really wonderful turnout. We had over 50 AAPI officers and others, including Chief Moore, all the way from Chief Moore down to probationary officers show up, show our support, marched in the parade, interacted with the community, and it's really a stark contrast to where we were in 1869. So 152 years later, we've come a long way. So from our first Asian officer being appointed in 1913, we originally were thinking that he was the first in the continental United States, but it's been pointed out that he actually was the first in the United States because Hawaii was not a state until 1959, I believe, and he was appointed in 1913. So LAPD was groundbreaking back then, and Lieutenant Russ Wong is going to speak about that when we get to that slide. So, not yet. So, sorry, I kind of preempted you. I'm trying to race through this, and really I'm not going to give enough credit to the history and the contributions and what we're doing today. But in the interest of time and out of respect for you, I'm doing this. So this slide really represents the kind of the diversity within the LAPD at this point. We have officers in every assignment, patrol, investigations, in every specialized division, and the really groundbreaking today, it's all because of the heritage and the work that was done by our forebears. So as Chief Chow had mentioned, we have quite a bit of representation in our staff officer and command officer ranks. We have 4 chiefs, Assistant Chief Troy, Deputy Chiefs Chow, Hamilton, and Graham, 2 commanders, myself and Commander Steve Embridge. And this is a great photo. We have 14 commanding officers that are AAPI Heritage. 3 of those are civilian command staff. And one thing I'd like to point out and thank Chief Moore and the Board of Police Commissioners for recognizing the work of all of these people, but specifically in the last year, we've had 7 promotions into the command officer rank of AAPI personnel, and those are on the bottom there. As you look at the photo, you can see kind of the breadth of the AAPI community, right? So it's not just the Southeast Asians that we talked about. You have people that are representing the Hawaiian Islands and Persia. You have Indian, Pakistani, Micronesia, I believe, Korean, Japanese, and Chinese there as well. Currently, AAPI in the department, we're approximately 966 officers total, all ranks, which is 10.62% of the department, slightly under the 2020 census, which shows in the city we have 11.9% AAPI within the city. So we do have a little bit of work to go. When you look at the other ethnic minority groups, they are slightly over the percentage as relates to the city. And so while we've made a lot of strides, we still believe that there's work to be done. And we are willing to work. LEAP is here for the department. We're part of the department. We want to assist in any kind of recruitment or retention needs that the department has. So significant AAPI first, of course, we've already mentioned 1913 Lung Yep. 1947, there was a huge gap between 1913 and 1947, so we call Stanley Ono the first AAPI officer of the modern era, because he was the next officer that was brought on. He also becomes our first AAPI sergeant. And then in 1967, our beloved Joyce Cano in the back, who's always embarrassed when I point this out, but she deserves it. She was our first AAPI female officer, and then also the first female AAPI detective. And then, unfortunately, in 1968, we had our first AAPI line of duty death with Gary Murakami. So again, think about that other slide that I showed, the current kind of the breadth of the participation in the department. This kind of shows some of our history in the department. I'm not going to go into all of it, but you can see that we have detectives that were involved in the O.J. Simpson arrest. You have officers that were nationally known experts in martial arts and law enforcement tactics and techniques. You have the first mounted officers. On the right, you can see Chief Chow was walking a footbeat in Chinatown. I believe he was the first Chinese-American senior lead officer there. Later on, becomes the first Chinese-American CAP area commanding officer of Central Division. So at this time, Russ is going to talk about the legacy of his great-grandfather, Lung Yep.
Good morning, everyone. Excuse me. Lung Yep was born in Canton, China in 1873. In 1905, he came to the United States with his son, Hing Lung. Immigrants entering the West Coast were processed at the Angel Island U.S. Immigration Station. And if you know Ellis Island in New York, well, that's the equivalent here in the United States on the West Coast. After clearing immigration, he lived in San Francisco, where he became a shareholder in the Sing Fat store. The Sing Fat store later expanded to Los Angeles with Lung Yep at the helm. He built a home at 600 North Gower in 1911. It's still there, still looks the same. Sing Fat Los Angeles store was located at 548 South Broadway. It extended a whole block through the whole block to Spring Street. And I went down there and it looks the same, except the business is different. His business was so successful that he served many non-Asian customers. He took part in and hosted many Chinese New Year and United States holiday parties at the store. City officials and prominent business people attended the parties and saw local Chinese as part of the community, not strangers. Considering the horrific killings of Chinese in 1871, this was the time and opportunity for the city and police department to integrate a member of the Chinese community into the LAPD and reach out to bridge the cultural gap. On November 17, 1913, Lung Yep was sworn in by LAPD Chief Charles Sebastian. Lung Yep died in 1953. Where there was one, now there are many Asian Pacific Islander officers serving Los Angeles and its diverse communities, representing all levels of the department. Commissioners, thank you for your time and legacy of service, inclusion, and oversight of the department.
Thank you, Russ. And next, we'd like to bring up Ben Lee, who was a member of the Asian Task Force.
Good morning, President Briggs and members of the Police Commission and also guests. It's a pleasure to speak before you. And I'm just going to speak about the Asian Task Force Bureau of Special Investigation. Chief Ed Davis, after many passionate discussions with the Asian Pacific Islander community leaders and senior LAPD officers, created the Asian Task Force to further his community team policing initiative back in 1975. It was activated in 1975, which had citywide responsibility. And also, the unit consisted of 5 officers, 2 supervisors, which were city-certified bilingual speakers in Asian languages and were bicultural. 2 civilian employees, which all were of Asian Pacific heritage, housed at Parker Center in room 116. It's kind of famous. The unit was responsible for investigating gang-related crimes, homicides, forgeries, extortions, grand thefts, any crimes which the victim was unable to communicate in English well or required cultural intervention. ATF assisted with developing training videos, training bulletins related to Asian Pacific policing. A notable case that came out of the unit was in 1974, we had a robbery of a Chinatown jewelry store where two responding officers, uniformed, went to the silent alarm. They were quickly engaged by four suspects in a gun battle, which resulted in the death of one Los Angeles police officer and a serious wounding of his partner. Two suspects were killed. One suspect was wounded, and the other was uninjured. The wounded and the uninjured escaped through the back door, and both suspects were captured within 20 hours of the incident. And after a tremendous review of the tactics and type of firearms that the LAPD officers were carrying at that time, Chief Darrell Gates recommended the antiquated revolver be replaced with the semi-automatic pistol to the Police Commission, and at which time it was approved in 1988. The unit was deactivated in 1990, and since we talked a little bit about hate crimes, Assemblyman Torres came to Asian Task Force and interviewed our supervisors, which helped him with introducing hate crime legislation. So Asian Task Force was not just limited to Asians. We were also looked upon as leaders and experts in the field. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. And at this time, I'd like to bring up Lieutenant Mike Yang to talk about the LEAP origins.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chief Labrada, and attendees. When I joined the LAPD in 1986, there were less than 50 officers who were of Asian Pacific ethnicities, roughly 0.6% of the department's sworn workforce. At the time, the department considered us in the same class as Caucasian officers when it came to recruitment, promotion, and selection for coveted positions. Unlike Oscar J. Bryant and Laleh, AAPI officers did not have a voice to address concerns to the upper management of the department. Since the inception of LEAP in 1991, it was not only committed in providing mentoring and career counseling of its members, as well as non-members, but it also actively assisted the department and law enforcement agencies in better understanding different cultures and policing needs of Asian Pacific communities. As of 2021 U.S. Census, there are almost 3.9 million residents in the city of Los Angeles, and approximately 12% are Asian Pacifics. I'm sure we can safely say LA is home to the 12% who are immigrants and their descendants from 48 Asian nations. That number would increase significantly when the undocumented and visitors are included. Since 1991, the department's number of AAPI officers grew to approximately 966, which is 10.6% of its sworn workforce. Currently, there are 20 AAPI command staff officers from the ranks of captain to assistant chief. I credit the department for its accomplishments in recruitment and promotion of AAPI officers. However, it took more than 3 long decades. Asian Pacific communities in Los Angeles continue to grow in demographics, and so are their needs for quality policing. I would like to encourage the department, from police officers to the Board of Commissioners, to continue to seek best policing practices for each and all of diverse communities in the city of Los Angeles in partnership with Law Enforcement Association of Asian Pacifics. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And at this time, I'd also like to recognize in memoriam of Detective George Min. So he was affectionately known as Papa George. He was a LEAP co-founder. He recently passed away in March of this year. He came on to LAPD in 1968. And his daughters, Laura and Michelle, are in attendance right there. So I'd like to give them to acknowledge their father, and his really was known as a mentor to many, and that's why they called him Papa George. But so he helped so many in the generations prior to me and people in my generation and beyond. So thank you very much for his support and guidance. And that concludes our presentation, and we're available for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Commander Tom and Chief Chow. This has been a tremendous education for me, for the public, to see the struggles of one community and the barriers that they broke through to obtain positions of leadership within the department. And I know that there is still work to do because, as you pointed out, you have, what is it, approximately 9% of the workforce here, but you're 12% of the community. So there's still some strides to make. So I want to touch on that point. What type of recruitment efforts is LEAP undertaking to bring visibility to the AAPI community, and then recruit those who want to serve our city?
So part of what we've done, sir, coming up, I believe it's on the 20th, the recruitment division is putting on an AAPI hiring summit. So they're inviting the public, and they've asked us to assist them. So we are pushing that on our social media. We're using our community contacts to push out the flyers for those events. Whenever they need API officers to be represented in photographs for brochures or flyers, or they have language needs or whatever, they look at us as a resource, and so we're available to provide that information. Myself and I believe 2 other LEAP members will be speaking at that hiring summit. I don't want to misspeak on the date, but I believe it's May 20th. I'm not sure. It's a Saturday coming up, I think 2 Saturdays from now. And so those kinds of things are what we do. As an example, I was speaking to one of the people that we had an Asian applicant who went through the process, got accepted, actually went to the orientation, and then went home, spoke to his family about it afterwards, and then has since withdrawn his application. So he's not going to be entering the academy. That's a situation where I had offered the department, if they like, I would be happy if the officers or the candidate is open to it. I would contact them directly. I would be happy to go speak to their family. I would go to their house if they would want me to do that. Because quite honestly, the field of law enforcement is not a field that is traditionally looked upon as something that AAPI parents are wanting their children to do. It's just not culturally something that we do. And so sometimes you have to overcome these barriers, right? So the traditional fields for AAPI, at least, the ideals, architect, doctor, lawyer, engineer, those kinds of fields are the things that are really pushed for. And so anything other than that, sometimes they can look at this and this field and think this is not what I want my son or daughter to do. But I think it's our job as people that are in the field right now to try to help educate those families and those officers that are thinking, or not officers, but candidates that are thinking about coming on the job, about the value of this job and why they're needed. And so that's something that we're willing to do with the department, and I've offered that.
Thank you, Commander. Commissioner Silveroff, any questions?
First of all, I was going to ask you about recruitment, but you just gave a complete response. I do want to ask you all, as you go into your community and attend community events and meetings, the issues of Los Angeles, the issues of America, how are they discussed in relation to the issues in your community? Guns, drugs, gangs, mental health issues, hate crimes, homelessness. Are they discussed in your community meetings? And how are they uniquely discussed in relation to the communities?
Yes, one of the things that I talked about was all the community forums that we were having, not only just for AAPI, but our Jewish community, our Muslim community, et cetera, that they were having, and that's where we really get into the nuts and bolts of those things that you're talking about, Commissioner. And hate crime is out there, and it is something that we continually have to beat the drum, so to speak, so that people don't stop thinking about it. And so we do that. We talk about hate crimes, how to report, why to report, because everybody that's at those forums has a story where they saw something. And as you can tell by the numbers that not everything's being reported. But also they do bring up other issues that are affecting their community. And I would say probably the number one thing that they're bringing up right now is mental health and homelessness. Those are the things that are really impacting their community kind of on a daily basis. no matter, what type of forum we're having in the city. So, that,
From within the community or from outside the community being?
no, being in the community, those are the things that affect, where they live, their businesses, things like that. And that seems to be the number one thing that's on their mind right now, that comes up quite a lot. And then follow that up with the plethora of guns that are out there right now, and the guns that are used in robberies. That is also a concern. I would say those are probably two of the biggest things that I see impacting the AAPI community right now. But because we're having the forums and because we have all our captains there, we're able to kind of connect them and with their area captains and start working together on some of the locations. We've had 3 inside safe locations from the mayor's office that have been in West Bureau that have, we're going on to a 4th this week on San Vicente, from what I'm told. So the information we're getting from the community is channeling through our command staff up to the powers that be, so we're able to address those problems.
Yeah, I was, I have to go back to recruitment for a second. As I look at from generation to generation, the pride in the officers, in the community, I see hope that continues, because that's such a difficult issue in the department generally. And then when you explained the reason why, and sometimes you have to go or try to go visit the parents and say, hey, you should be just as proud of a doctor, et cetera, being an officer. And what strikes me is that in this department, relatively uniquely in America, are opportunities for growth in all kinds of professions within law enforcement. And I wonder if that is that a selling tool to those parents, to those people who push back?
I believe it is, sir. Part of, I think the concerns that any parent would have is my son or daughter going to be on the front lines? Are they going to be in constant danger? Are they going to get killed? Are they going to be able to live in the community that they live in now? Do they have to move far away? There's so many questions, and to your point earlier, what are the concerns that the Asian American Pacific Islander community have? They're the same as every other community. They all want to live and work and exist in their communities the same as everyone else. They have some specific issues that they're dealing with, but culturally, the field of law enforcement is just not something that in other Asian countries, particularly in the older generations, that they looked upon as something that was the most honorable, the highest esteemed. And so to try to explain to them that it's different in Los Angeles, in the state of California, in the United States, being a police officer is a very honorable profession. You can make an impact in the community. You can make a good living. I mean, this is the reality of why you choose to do different jobs. And so to talk about all of those reasons why, and in fact, there's over 250 different job classifications within the department. There's so many different jobs that you can do within the Los Angeles Police Department. There's many opportunities, and the fact that Chief Chow and myself and Assistant Chief Choi and Chief Hamilton and Chief Graham and others that we're talking about that are so high in the organization, any Asian American Pacific Islander candidate or officer can look at us and see that they can make it also. Previously, that's not something that truthfully they could see, like, oh, well, maybe someday I could be a captain, or I could be a commander, or I could be a chief, because there never was one at some point in our history. The fact that all these people are here now is something that you can point to as a recruiter to say you can not only be an officer, you can be a detective, you can do all of these things. Anything you want to do within this organization, you can do. But part of, like you're saying, sir, our job is to help them and the families see all of these opportunities for what they are.
I have a question for Laura and Michelle, if you're at all comfortable in responding to this. Probably, I mean, I know for myself, I never met your dad. You want to tell us a little bit about your dad, about growing up with a cop as your dad. Are you guys comfortable in spending a minute? Or is it too emotional for you, or, yeah, please. Are you Michelle or Laura?
I'm Laura. That's
Come on,
Michelle. I'm the older daughter, so I guess that's
I got it.
the thing.
Tell us about your dad.
I had more years with him. um, my dad joined the LAPD in 1968. I was 5 years old. And actually, before then, I lived with my grandparents because my parents were very young and they didn't have a lot of economic stability. And so I was raised by my grandparents. My grandfather was the first consul general to the United States from the Republic of Korea. So they were here since 1948. My dad came when he was 7. And he was very much an American, always an American. And my grandfather was probably the most patriotic person for the United States that I've ever known. But in 1968, my dad joined the police department, and he was so proud to be an officer of the LAPD.
Were you proud of him?
Oh my gosh.
To school and say, this is my daddy? And
You know, yeah, you know what? Well, yes, one time he came to my class and did on a career day, and they did and he brought he sharpened a bunch of pencils, and then he showed us how they make fingerprints. And so we all did fingerprinting, and I think I was probably in second grade. I think I told John a little earlier that when my dad was first on the police department, he had traffic control, and he was wearing the white gloves. And my aunt got my grandmother and me in the car, my halmani in the car, and she said, "Let's go see your dad." And so we drove through the intersection, and then we circled around and we drove through the intersection.
Sweet.
And after the third time, he was like, "Go." So, okay, but my dad loved being a police officer. It gave, he thought it was the highest calling. And he spent, the reason he was known as Papa George was because he spent so much time trying to help other Korean people, but also of other Asian heritages, become police officers. He wanted to encourage more people to take this position and to be of community service. He just really thought it was the highest level. And in our family, we do have doctors and teachers. He was the only lawyers, and he was the only police officer. And so in some ways, he was maybe in a less prestigious position in our family, but relative to his brothers and sisters, but also probably had the most impact because he did help so many people. And at the memorial last weekend, there were probably 80 people there. The majority were from the LAPD family. And we had the honor guard, and the sergeant who led the honor guard said, normally someone who's retired this long, maybe there's a half dozen people who show up. And he said, this speaks to the impact your father had on the community. And on the LAPD, he loved the LAPD till the very end. And even though he retired in 1997, he still called it we. Did you see what we did? Did you read in the paper what we did today? And that was just part of it. And he instilled, I think, in my sister and me, principles of integrity, lawfulness, but more than that, doing the right thing, speaking up, being present, not turning away when things are difficult, just having integrity. That's really what that's what he personified, and that's what he wanted to bring, I think, to everybody that he helped. I think he helped probably 3 or 4 generations of subsequent officers, and it's amazing to see some of the gentlemen that I knew as a little girl that are still here in the front row, and it's astounding to me. So we're very grateful for the life that the LAPD gave my dad and us by extension. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Soborov. Commissioner Kalanche.
Thank you for that, Laura, Michelle. That was great. And thank you for the presentation. I think that these are the best retro pictures. I'm really enjoying these pictures. I just have a follow-up on some of the hate crime. I know like in the last couple of years, there's been an effort to get the community to increase reporting, which is like very important. And the numbers, weren't really matching what we were seeing, right? The numbers of reported hate crimes wasn't really matching like the seriousness of what was happening out in the community. And I know that we've had presentations where we've invited Asian Americans Advancing Justice and other groups. So I just wanted to follow up to find out if the reporting is increasing. Are we getting more folks involved in wanting to report? I mean, I don't. It's kind of interesting because I don't want to say like we want to increase reporting because we want to make sure that these incidents are not happening. But if they are happening, are people reporting and any other efforts? I think it's really important. The last few years have been very difficult for the Asian community in Los Angeles, and I would say across the country. So I just want to see like what efforts and what's working and what's the status of all that work that you're doing out there
Sure.
with the community.
Thank you, Commissioner. Actually, the reporting has gone down. So as I mentioned, in 2021, we had 41 AAPI reported hate crimes, and then in 2022, that went down to 32. And this year, we're on year-to-date, we've only got 11. And just intuitively, that those numbers are not accurate. When the LAPD, anybody that reports a hate crime or hate incident generates a response by radio car. That's how we handle them because of the fact that there are situations where the victim needs to be kind of handed off and maybe given services and things like that. But recently, I think there's a couple things that happened. Number one is, really quite honestly, the message to report and to do something about it can really never stop. Because I've noticed that, once we get on a campaign, if it tails off a little bit, so does the reporting. And it's because it's not being kept in the forefront of people's minds. So that's a campaign that really probably will be going on for generations. The other thing I think, there are people that don't want a police officer to show up and report it. And we have to acknowledge that because it's a fact of life. So I worked with Jomana Saban, and she works for Capri Maddox. We met with Communications Division as well as the city's 311 and 211 and put a system in place where if you don't want to report by calling 911, you can call 211 and report it through there, and they'll screen the call. If it's a crime and requires a police officer, they'll make that offer to the caller, but they can report it there. There are probably a lot of ways I think that, let me say this, when we work with the community groups, the numbers that they report are much higher than the numbers that we report. So based upon that not everything's being reported. At all the forums that we have, we reiterate the way that you can report and why to report and how to report. Commander Flores, when we were doing the LA for All campaign, had some hate crime cards that were made that were in, how many different languages, Ruby? Four different languages that we handed out to officers so they can give them to people that show how to report. Those are all things that we just need to keep doing and looking at the numbers and seeing if we can get to a point where people are more comfortable reporting things. And I think that overall, we live in a society where people don't want to get involved in things. They see things and they look the other way, and we need to, part of our message really is to get people need to become involved in things that they see, because until that happens, we're still going to have hate crimes and hate incidents, on all groups that are going to be unreported. And when that happens, people that are committing these incidents become emboldened and just commit more of them.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. You said 211 or did you mean 311?
Well, both. Actually, they can report it to both.
211 also takes incident reports for like hate crimes or
Yes,
any other.
yeah, they can report
I
it
didn't
to
know
both.
that. Okay. And 311 also has a
Right.
mechanism where, okay. So thank you for that. I think that we can maybe, yeah, I'm thinking of working with the Capri's office and figuring out how to better track hate crime incidents, or how to facilitate the reporting. Maybe it's not through the department, but through other mechanisms where we can respond, where it's easier for folks to report and feel more comfortable reporting. So I appreciate that. It's something for us to think about a little bit more. So thank you, Chief Chow.
Thank you, Commissioner Kalanche. Commissioner Suthers.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the chiefs and the commander for your incredible presentation today, and pivot back to what President Briggs said earlier about the education. It's extremely valuable. Commander Tom, Commissioner Shields, and I look forward to meeting with you next week. And I don't think that the importance of history can ever be overstated. With that, I want to say that, again, I was educated today with regards to things that may have happened to the AAPI community in the Los Angeles Police Department. But I think it's vitally important, and I want to thank Ms. Cano for her service, for being the first. And having said that, at a time in our history where we have groups in this country that are trying to erase the history they don't like, I think it's vitally important that AAPI history, the history of the officers in LA, in OJB, I think it's vitally important, especially with their very robust museum that this department has, that it be part of the curriculum for our cadets in the academy, so they understand the history of this department and officers like Ms. Cano, because we stand on the shoulders of giants, and they need to know who came before them. I think it's vitally important. If that's not happening, it should be happening as part of the curriculum for the academy. The question that I have goes back to Commissioner Kalanche. I serve on the subcommittee. I'm the chair of the subcommittee for the Governor's Commission on the State of Hate. And I serve on the subcommittee on recommendations for law enforcement. I don't have to tell you the challenges we have with regards to reporting and the challenges that we have with regards to specifically AAPI hate in this country. In fact, it led the country 2 years ago. So I would welcome all of you in the efforts that you're engaged here at LAPD. If you have any recommendations for the department, you have any recommendations for the state, please get engaged. Let me know. We would love to work with you. But I want to applaud you for what you're doing. You've got our support. But again, I can't overstate how important it is that people understand, all officers understand, the history of this department and the history of the people that came before, like Ms. Cano, and the things they had to go through for you all to be where you are today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Suthers. Commissioner Shields.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions and also comments. First, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, and thanks for bringing everyone to this commission hearing as well. I have to echo Commissioner Suthers' comments about there's just so much history in this room. And I really hope that in addition to having these types of conversations and presentations, that this is all being documented and well preserved, with videos. And I'd love to see a documentary done on the first female detective and first female officer. So hopefully those are all being preserved, not only for our own history, but also as part of recruiting efforts, that somewhere they can find these videos and can be proud of how LAPD led the way for this community. And also on that note, Commander Tom, you've talked about how so much outreach actually needs to happen to the families, and whether there's been any recruiting videos kind of geared towards that. So identifying that there are unique concerns that are provided in your community for recruiting on that front. Maybe that's something that could be put together for purposes of, really having almost a package you could provide recruits all together that they can share with their family. So it's not just a one-on-one conversation, although I think that would be greatly appreciated as well.
Appreciate your comments, Commissioner, and that's something absolutely LEAP would be happy to participate in. We obviously have many members of different nationalities, ethnicities, and language capabilities, and I think it's something that we could definitely assist with.
Wonderful. And I was very happy to hear about all of the collaboration you're doing with other community groups, because that is really the place where the community feels comfortable going. They don't always call the police as a first instance. And I know like Asian Americans Advancing Justice have a pretty robust reporting mechanism, and that they probably have more accurate numbers than the LAPD does. Has there been a partnership with these community groups where there's a mechanism for, marking down, like, when someone reports an incident or a crime to these community members, if they can just check off a box of, like, can we share your information with the LAPD for follow-up, or is there any kind of collaboration or discussion like that?
No, there is a partnership between those types of groups and the LAPD that, that exchange information. I don't know about the waiver. We'll have to follow up on that and find out if that's something that they ask and, when they're interviewing people that are reporting hate crimes or hate incidents.
That may just be something, especially if the communities that you're working with see the passion and the fact that the citizens' concerns will be taken seriously and not dismissed, that they may be more willing to, if the community partners are vouching for the LAPD, that might just be an opportunity for them to create that bridge. And if they're just willing for them to pass along that information to you and their contact information, and then, they're approached by, an officer that is going to be sensitive to their concerns, that just may result in increased relationships with the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shields. Commander Tom, I believe at this time we have a video from you.
Yes, sir, and I believe you already have that video. This was created by Media Relations.
May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our entire AAPI community and pay tribute to the generations of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders who continue to enrich America's history and are instrumental in its future success. Our relationship with the AAPI community is important in enhancing our community's confidence and trust in our department. Critical in building that relationship and trust is ensuring our diversity within our department, including members of our AAPI community. Over the years, we've seen our AAPI membership in our department grow, and individuals ascend to the highest levels of our department. And while I'm proud of the work that's been done this far, I recognize there is still much more to be done.
I'm Commander Jonathan Tom of the Los Angeles Police Department. I'm the Assistant Commanding Officer of Operations West Bureau and the current president of the Law Enforcement Association of Asian Pacifics, also known as LEAP. In 1978, members of Congress passed a joint resolution marking the first 10 days of May as Asian Pacific American Heritage Week. Over the years, the celebration was expanded to encompass the entire month of May. The month of May was chosen to commemorate the first Asian immigrants from Japan, who arrived in May of 1843, as well as the first immigrants from China, who arrived in May of 1869. While these arrivals were considered to be the first Asians in the country, it should be noted that Asians have been in the United States since at least October of 1587, when Filipinos came to California aboard Spanish trading ships. The Los Angeles Police Department made history in 1913 when it appointed Lung Yep as a special police officer. Officer Yep's appointment was significant because he was the first APIA officer in not only the department, but in the entire continental United States. There have been many APIA milestones to celebrate since then. The Los Angeles Police Department is committed to serving all of our diverse communities, which includes the multitude of Asian Pacific Islander communities within the city of Los Angeles. According to the U.S. Census, there are nearly 500,000 APIA residents in the city of Los Angeles, over 1 million in Los Angeles County, and over 7 million in California. But the department nearly matches the composition of the city.
My name is Vanessa Vinlawan. I currently work Hollywood Division. I am passionate about running. I love to read. I am a second-generation police officer.
I'm a father. I'm a proud girl dad. I'm a husband. I'm a son. I'm a Christian. I'm a proud immigrant from the Philippines.
I'm Susan Chu. I work out of Office of Operations. I'm a wife. I'm a sister. I'm an aunt. I have 3 beautiful rescue dogs, Layla, Brittany, and Titus. I love to travel. I'm a geek. I love Comic-Con and collecting items. I also like to crochet on my off time.
I am an investor. I am a runner. And I'm a gamer.
I am a brother, I am a son, I'm an uncle. I migrated from Taiwan to this country when I was 14 years old. I am the first police officer in my family.
I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm an avid outdoorsman. I enjoy hunting, fishing, cycling, and working out.
Our forebears come from all walks of life and have contributed greatly to this wonderful community and country. During this month, we come together as one to celebrate our accomplishments and contributions.
I am LAPD.
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 The department recognizes the outstanding work, entrepreneurship, innovation, and accomplishments members of the AAPI community have made in Los Angeles and our nation. On behalf of every member of this department, thank you.
I want to thank all of you for a wonderful presentation, but more than that, I want to thank you for your contributions to the Los Angeles Police Department and your sacrifices. We have a long way to go. We'll get there. We'll get there together. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
At this point, we're going to go to a 5-minute recess, and then we'll resume with item 4B. I guess we can go ahead and resume at this time, Madam Secretary. And we're going to go to item 4B, the department's verbal presentation with respect to the Department of Community Organizations to respond to gang violence through prevention, intervention, and enforcement operations South Bureau. Deputy Chief Gerald Woodyard is present with us.
Yes, sir. Wow, what an amazing presentation that we heard from my colleagues. I'm touched. I learned a lot like everyone else here. Good morning, distinguished Board of Police Commissioners, President Briggs, and others. My name is Gerald Woodyard. I'm the Deputy Chief Officer in charge of Operation South Bureau. Operation South Bureau oversees operations in the following areas: Southwest, 77th, Southeast, Harbor, and South Bureau Homicide Division. South Bureau has a population of roughly 820,000 residents and encompasses 57.6 square miles and includes such well-known Los Angeles landmarks as USC, the Coliseum, Bank of Montreal Stadium, formerly the Bank of California Stadium, Watchtowers, the Harbor Gateway, the Port of Los Angeles, and Exposition Park museums, as well as Leimert Park. We have sworn personnel of 1,313, 74 civilian support staff, and our mission remains the same. In partnership with the community to reduce both the level and fear of crime as we improve the quality of life, community and police relationships, and the quality of life for all our Angelenos. But it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you the command officers who make up South Bureau. So we have here Captain Rudy Lopez, he's the commanding officer of Southwest area. Captain Brent McGuire is the commanding officer of Harbor area. Captain Ahmad Zarankani is the commanding officer of 77th area. Captain Yvonne Ortiz is the commanding officer of Southeast area. And last but not least is Captain Adrian Gonzalez, who's the commanding officer of South Bureau Homicide Division. I also have in attendance with us our partners from Gang Reduction and Youth Development Program. Cornell Ward, he's a regional program coordinator, affectionately known as Coach. And Andrew Garcia, he's also a regional program coordinator from Gang Reduction and Youth Development Program. They're here to underscore the relationship with us and how their work plays an integral role in preventing retaliatory shootings from occurring. So currently, OSB works with 7 grid partners. That's gonna be Strong Shoulders, Second Chance, Volunteers of America, Community Built, Advocates for Peace and Urban Unity, Soledad Enrichment Action, and Chapter 2. In 2022, we had a total of 298 grid referrals and 478 diversions. And year-to-date, we have 106 grid referrals and 112 diversions. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the crime picture in Operation South Bureau, and each commanding officer will have a moment to provide their presentation specific to their area of responsibility. As many of you know, Operation South Bureau is comprised of 4 divisions, and each of those communities is unique in their diversity and complex in terms of how to collectively address gang crimes. There are approximately 80 gangs in Operation South Bureau with over 12,600 gang members. These numbers represent individuals who have been identified as gang members. OSB commands are constantly working to ensure our efforts are concentrated on active gangs. Operation South Bureau remains committed to working collectively with our partners, but more importantly, being precise in how we overlay our crime strategies and personnel resources in the community. And that's done to ensure that those that want to commit violent crimes are removed and brought to justice without alienating the community with a wide net approach. We are keenly aware that the community longs for officers to do their job the right way, and our personnel agree with that mandate. Historically, Operation South Bureau has been infamously associated with violent crime, specifically gang-related violent crime, which often resulted in homicides. If we look back to 1992, the city of Los Angeles had a total of 1,092 homicides, 39,508 robberies, 88,919 violent crimes, and some would suggest that a good share of those could be attributed to Operation South Bureau. However, I'm excited to say that the men and women that sit next to me have done a phenomenal job of ensuring that their strategies and focus are on point, and we have seen a dramatic decrease in violent crime in Operation South Bureau this year. For example, we are currently sitting at 27 homicides versus 50, which is a 44% reduction. We currently have 740 robberies compared to 928 robberies last year, which is a 20.3% reduction. Our overall crime reduction year to date is 16%. Over the past years, there's been a sharp increase in the number of gun-related crimes on the streets. These crimes are recognized as a serious threat and challenge faced by our department today. Operation South Bureau remains committed to reducing violent crime and removing guns from the streets of Los Angeles. In 2022, Operation South Bureau removed 2,869 guns from the streets. So our officers are out there doing proactive police work the right way. And year to date, we've removed 775 guns. Every gun removed from the streets contributes to violent crime reduction and the safety of the community. And I would love to say that this reduction is due to the work of LAPD alone, but we know without a doubt that the reduction that we're currently experiencing is a combination of being precise with our crime strategies, maintaining an authentic relationship with GRID, and community-based organizations. I would be remiss if I did not mention the leadership of this team that sits before you. At this time, I would like to invite Captain Lopez to speak.
Good morning, Chief. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Rudy Lopez. I'm the Area Commanding Officer for Southwest for the last year and a half. A little bit about Southwest. It's 13.11 square miles, population of about 200,000. Within my division, I have USC, and when they're in session, that in and out migration of students and teachers, it significantly adds to Southwest. On the border, so you have a good idea, we're probably one of the few divisions that is sort of a rectangular size in its geographic area. I have on the north side, I got the 110 freeway. On the east, I have the 110 freeway. On the south, I have Vernon, and on the west, we go all the way down to La Cienega. So it's a large area. Southwest currently has 16 active gang members in our division. We've identified 9 of those as black gangs and 7 as Hispanic gangs. On the, as they refer to as blood gangs, we have the Black Pea Stones, we have the Rolling Twenties Neighborhood Bloods, we have the Fruit Town Brims Criminals, and we have the Van Ness Gangsters. Opposing the Bloods, we have what they know, or what they call themselves as the Crip gangs. Those are the Rolling 30s Harlem Crips, and we have the Rolling 40s Neighborhood Crips. Running with them is also the West Boulevard Gang and Gear Gangsters. On the Hispanic side, we have 18th Street Villains, Alley Tiny Criminals, Dead and Harpies, MS, Easy Riders and Drifters. A lot of gangs in Southwest, but a lot of them are present but not really active. What we identify as primary active gangs, we have the, as I noted, is the Black Pea Stones. They are predominantly in the lower Baldwin area. The Rolling 20s Neighborhood Bloods, they're in the northwest portion of my division. And following them from, they sort of follow the street sequential order of 20s, 30s, 40s as we go north to south in my division. So from the 20s, we got the 30s Harlem Crips, which is in the middle of my division. And then the Rolling 40s Neighborhood Crips, which is in the southern part, which spills into 77th Division. On the Hispanic side, I have 18th Street. Again, these are what we labeled as active. 18th Street is on the north sector of my division. Dead and Harpies is on the northwestern sector of my division, and the Alley Teeny Criminals on the middle part of Southwest. Due to our inability to currently document track gang membership, the numbers provided are back from 2020. According to our data over the last 3 years, we have estimated about 2,500 gang members within Southwest. We estimate that 75% of our gang members are associated with a black gang and 25% are connected with Hispanic gangs. We believe that in Southwest, of all violent crime by gang members, that includes ag assaults, homicides, rapes, and robberies, 80% are associated with our black gangs and 20% by our Hispanic gangs. I was asked to give a month ratio of what our crime picture looks like, and from February 19th to March 18th of this year, we've associated specifically with gang crimes, ags at 4, rape at 1, and robbery at 3, for a total of 8 total gangs. Gang crime for 2022, we have a total of 86 ags, 15 homicides, 1 rape, and 46 robberies. I think most important is a comparison of where we're going. I like to measure the gauge, even though I don't like to measure the success of gang units by the number of arrests and the number of guns, but I like to measure it as the success and the reduction in crime as it's associated with gangs. So Part 1 crime compared to year to date, from 23 to 22, we're already showing a 14% reduction in ags, a 33% reduction in homicides. In robberies, we have a 21% reduction. In burglaries and GTA, we have a 100% reduction. So total year to date, we're already looking at a 20% reduction in our gang crime. In our total of guns year to date, we have 166 guns recovered, and of those, 50 guns have been recovered by our gang unit. And compared to 19 and 22, we had 523 guns recovered. Of that, 163 of those guns were recovered by our GED. There currently is no established feuding gangs in Southwest. Last year, we had an internal strife within the Black Pea Stones Bloods in Lower Baldwins, resulting in multiple shootings and 2 homicides. The first homicide continues to be unsolved. The second one has resulted in the suspect being hospitalized and arrested. Historically, all blood Southwest Bloods and Crips gangs are actively feuding with each other, but again, we have not seen an uptick or a feuding of retaliatory shootings going on for the last year and a half. Black Pea Stones and Rolling 20s feud with 18th Streeters, and the Alley Teeny Criminals feud with the Street Villain Harpies. What historically known as Hood Days, we refer to now as Neighborhood Days. The Black Pea Stone Jungle Set, they celebrate their days May 1st and May 5th, usually with large gatherings in Jim Gillian Park. The Black Pea Stone PD Stone set celebrate their Hood Days in February, and most of them congregate in the Benny Potter Park. The Rolling Twenties celebrate their Hood Days in February. The Fruit Town Brim celebrate in March. The Harlem 30s, which is the larger group, the larger gang in our area, they celebrate historically in March, and March 10th is the big day where they large gathering in MLK Park. Last year alone, due to probably not the best plan in action, we had about 130 gang members in MLK Park. That ended up becoming a tactical alert. We had request resources from all over South Bureau to assist with breaking up the fight. Out of that breakup, several arrests and several guns were recovered. We planned a lot better this year. Even though we had a plan in action about closing the parking lot, we had the interventionist out deployed prior to the gathering, and we had no incident to report of any gang issues in MLK Park, which historically has been the biggest problem of retaliatory shooting going on in that park. Part of our enforcement strategies in Southwest is the GED and detectives working collaboratively to monitor, document, and suppress gang activity in Southwest. Southwest's GED strategies include conducting data-driven analytics with our ASICs, processing and identifying gang reports related to the gangs, identified suspects involved in a Ramey warrant, and mitigating all possible retaliation. We talk about collaboration. We talk about getting all these resources together to share information. Every day when I pull up my phone, I get the emails of significant arrests. Just this morning, this is so very common, in custody. This gang member, due to the shared of information with my gang officers, with the grid officers, sharing the information with my bureau CSU units, they're able to identify this guy within 1 week after involvement in a shooting. This is it's very common that we get this information. We work collaboratively with parole and probation. Our parole agents and our probation officers both are assigned to Southwest. They arrived in the vehicles with our GED units, and they're present during the search warrants. Both parole and probation officers offer their assistance with GED with conducting parole and probation searches. GRID, GED works with GRID with at-risk youth and youth gang members. Southwest has made 36 referrals year to date, which is a vast improvement from past years. GED has made strides in getting patrol to understand and utilize referrals as an alternative. With that said, we work with our council districts. We work with the ATF. We currently have our GED working relationships with ATF. Recently, officers became aware of a suspect furnishing firearms with Black P Stone members and passing information to ATF, which is working with our OSB CSU unit. All three units are working together. With that, I know time is of the essence. I'm wrapping mine up, and I'm going to pass it over to Harbor Division, my good friend, Brent McGuire.
Good morning. I'm proud to represent Harbor Division, who has the communities of microphone on, San Pedro, Wilmington, Harbor City, and the Gateway. This quick snapshot for Harbor Division is we have about 8 active gangs, the most prominent of which are 3 gangs. One is the Rancho San Pedro, which is out of the Rancho San Pedro Housing Development. The other is basically east side Wilmington and west side Wilmington, where they take the community of Wilmington and they split it down the middle with Avalon Boulevard. And if you're from the east side, you better not go west of Avalon. And if you're on the west side, you better not go east of Avalon. That's the quick snapshot of what we have going on as far as our gangs in the Harbor area. A couple of initiatives I wanted to highlight is number one, we do have a pilot program where we have a gang intervention and prevention senior lead officer. That is where we have a senior lead officer that is solely dedicated to the prevention and intervention of youth becoming involved in gangs. So getting a little bit to the conversations this morning, working with schools, working with some of those families where we have those youths that are about on that path where they can go right or left into a productive life or one into a life of gangs. We have an officer solely dedicated to making sure that they go the right path. The other thing that we found with our grid partners is trying to get more participation of people utilizing our grid services. One of the things we realized is that it's really hard to bring people to the services, so we thought, why don't we bring the services to the people? So we began an initiative to start opening up some grid drop-in sites. So instead of having people from the Gateway drive all the way down to San Pedro, we are now opening up some grid drop-in sites up in the Harbor Gateway. One we're hoping to open up in July. We are naming after Cheryl Green, who was the 14-year-old homicide victim up in the Harbor Gateway, whose only sin in life was that she was black and she had the audacity to move into a Hispanic neighborhood that was controlled by a gang. So we'll be proud to open that up in July to both honor her life and make sure that that event was never forgotten in that community, and also to provide services to youth up there so that we can prevent the next such incidents up there. Lastly, I'll just highlight that I think partly due to our proximity to the port, we have an excellent relationship with our federal partners. So I think a little bit unique to other gang units is at the divisional level. We have several task forces operating with both the ATF, Homeland Security, and the FBI. These investigations are long-term investigations where we're not just targeting street-level drug and gun violence, but also trying to investigate and get to the upper echelons of the gang hierarchy, so we can have a lasting impact of what's going on there. The only crime statistic I'll give you is the most important one, is that as of this day, we currently have 0 homicides in Harbor area. This is the first time in the 21st century that we've had 0 homicides at this point in the year. On average, we would expect to have 5 homicides at this point, so the collaboration with the folks sitting behind me and the folks sitting to my right, I think speaks volumes to the efforts that our partners are producing in order to save lives that we have out there every day. With that, I'll turn it over to Captain Zeracani from 77th.
Good morning, members of the commission, chief. I'm Captain Ahmad Zeracani. I'm the commanding officer of 77th Street area. My gang impact team is tasked with gathering information, identifying gang crime patterns, monitor gang-related activities, and implement crime reduction strategies. And when I say crime reduction strategies, one of the questions you asked the chief earlier, Commissioner Clancy, why crime numbers are down. And I'll tell you, what I see in my command is the level of teamwork, partnership we have with our community groups. And let me give you an example. So last night, I'm reviewing material for this morning, getting ready for this presentation, late last night. I get a phone call from the watch commander. Captain, we had another shooting. Unfortunately, the victim just passed away. So I immediately started heading to my division, and as I'm responding there, I'm also communicating with my great partner, the coach, who's here today. And we responded there, we talk about what happened, and as we're talking, members of the community, people who live in that neighborhood, the apartment buildings surrounding where this victim passed away, and now police is there, we blocked the area. They're coming and asking us, and what happened? Who's this person? Should I be concerned about my children? Should I be concerned about my family members? And Coach and I were talking to them. We had open communication with the community. Obviously, we can't disclose everything to them. What we're able to tell them, at least there's nothing for them to worry about. And that really kind of reminded me of, 28 years ago, being a young policeman and going to crime scenes. And when community members are coming and asking us, hey, what's going on, what happened? The way we were trained is, hey, don't worry about it. It's not your concern. Move about. I mean, that right there, this a small example tells you how far we've come. Community is part of us, and that open communication, that level of being able to be open to them, that brings a lot of comfort. And it went on. I was talking to Coach, and we talk about some of our experiences. Really, when we're talking about policing today in LAPD, based on my experience, but it's what I've seen, it's day and night. Community is a huge, huge part of what we do. Another example, yesterday we had our orientation day for new officers who came to 77. And there were some officers who actually were born and raised in 77, and there are officers who were here from East Coast and Northern California, have no idea what 77 is. So we had community members there to talk to them, because what you hear is very different than if you're, I say if you're there daily dealing with community, because they have the same concerns as someone who lives in West LA, as someone who lives in the Valley. They want a safe and secure place for their families, for their children. And I can tell you how proud I am of 77 relationship with our nonprofits, with GRID. We have meetings. I remember last year we had a back and forth gang feud with a couple of particular gangs. And I reached out to Coach, I reached out to GRID partners, I reached out to our nonprofit. We actually had a meeting in person, and it was during COVID, so we complied with COVID restrictions. Everyone masked up, and we met in our community room. We brought everyone together. Let's talk about this. And it was very open and honest discussion. We're sick of seeing people being killed here. This needs to come to an end. And it really wasn't, I sent a large number of police officers there to do anything. Well, we were there, we were present, because our presence make a difference. But at the same time, we got the community to work. We had our clergy council, we had we had Pastor Cable there, who's really well respected in 77 community. We had everyone involved, hands-on, and we were able to control and quell that back and forth, and that's something what we didn't want. Social media has a lot of positivity, but unfortunately, there is a lot of problems that come with it, and that's, I call it rumors. Rumors in South LA or in the 77th area can cause a havoc, because we have these youngsters, they disrespect the neighborhood, they videotaped it, put it on Instagram, and that can just blow up into a shooting back and forth, which we had an incident about 2 years ago with regards to one of our gangs. So having, I call it rumor control. Immediately when we have a shooting, when we have an incident, I'm on phone with GRID, I'm on telephone with our clergy council, I'm on phone with our CPAP members. Let the community know what the truth is, what's going on here, and let's get the community involved. When we talk about homicide reductions in the city, it's been significant, really significant. Well, in 77, our homicide this year are down 48%. And I tell you the significance of that. 1/3 of all homicide reduction in city comes from 77th area. Unfortunately, I mean, year to date, we have 13, but 13 is actually a 48% reduction compared to last year. And last year, we had 25% reduction compared to 2020. So the numbers here are really significant. Let me just tell you about our shooting incidents. So far, year to date, in 77th area, we had 138 shooting incidents, and 65 people were shot. Of that, if you compare that to last year, we're down by 33%. Last year, this time, we had 97 victims shot. So this huge reduction really, I don't contribute it all to us. It's really community. It's getting community involved, GRID involved, nonprofits involved, the churches involved, and that partnership is really paying us off. The other thing I want to talk to you about is the level of cooperation we have with our ATF, because really what fuels violence, particularly gang violence in South LA, is guns. It's guns, particularly ghost guns. And it's to a point that we have even assigned some of our officers and detectives as a TFO. And we have the equipment that was given to us by federal government in our facility to test guns, and we are able to connect so many of the shootings that are in South LA through the equipment we have and through cooperation with the ATF. And it has helped us solve many, many crimes, shooting incidents in South LA. I was going to talk about a couple other things, but I can see I'm over my allotted time by my partners, my chief. So I'm going to end it here, and I'll pass it to my partner, Captain Yvonne Ortiz, Captain 3, Area Captain in Southeast.
Good morning. Thank you. Happy to be here. Happy to be representing Southeast Division. So Southeast area has accounted for approximately 30 documented gangs within our 9.3 square mile area. Our gang enforcement detail has identified approximately 6,350 documented gang members within those gangs and identified the most active gangs as the East Coast Crips and the Bounty Hunter Bloods. That's just to name a couple. These gangs are consistently involved in criminal activity, including robberies, aggravated assaults, shootings, and homicides. However, year to date, we have experienced reductions in all these crimes except for our aggravated assaults, with a 7.6% increase. Southeast attributes most gang crime to feuds between rival gangs, like Captain Z has spoken, who use the perpetrated violence to intimidate and control an area that they claim is their territory. We have found that robberies, for instance, occur for the furtherance of their, for the financial furtherance of their gang. Most of our gang feuds stem from a long history of feuds that remain active today. Our gang enforcement detail's primary enforcement mission is to conduct crime suppression in directed patrol areas to prevent and suppress gang crime. They regularly collaborate with our gang impact team detectives and our federal partners. Officers assigned to the gang enforcement detail, they meet daily with our gang impact team detectives. We share information associated with in preliminary investigations, and then their collaborative efforts often lead to subsequent identifications of suspects, resulting in their arrests. For us as well, probation and parole compliance inspections have been an important tool for the enforcement of gang crimes. Our gang enforcement detail officers completed 89 compliance checks in 2022 and 22 compliance checks so far year to date. It has led to several arrests and the recovery of numerous firearms and contraband, thus preventing future violence, along with gathering intelligence on the gangs and the individual gang members. Another investigative tool is the collaboration with our federal partners, alcohol, tobacco, and fire agencies. Our partnerships with ATF allows for the investigations into illegal firearms trafficking and sales, and then those qualifying firearms arrests are presented to the U.S. Attorney's Office for filing consideration. We also leverage our community outreach to prevent gang crime and prevent gang membership. Officers routinely encounter our at-risk youth who are on the brink of joining a gang or associate with a gang, and then we take these opportunities to refer them to our Gang Reduction and Youth Development, our GRID program. In addition to the GRID referrals, many of our youth also joined our Southeast programs, some of our boxing, our soccer teams, and the Watts football team. I'm proud to say they're all coached by Southeast officers in collaboration with the Community Safety Partnership Bureau. To further enhance our community outreach, our leadership teams attend biweekly GRID meetings. I attend each Monday the Watts Gang Task Force conference call, and we also all participate in Coffee with a Cop, just to name a few. We use these as opportunities to acquire direct feedback on our GRID partners, our community stakeholders, often resulting in real-time updates for us on the neighborhood information and also gang intelligence. So in closing, for us, with Southeast Division takes great pride in achieving the department's mission in reducing gang crime. In 2022, our gang impact team was solely responsible for 675 arrests and the recovery of 316 firearms, 44 of which were ghost guns. We're on target to continue to reducing gang crime with 133 arrests and the recovery of 106 firearms, 18 of those being ghost guns year to date. Our mission to prevent gang crime not only settles from the arrests and the recovery of the weapons, but from our community outreach, which has been spoken of deeply here. In 2022, we completed 92 GRID referrals and 28 year to date. So this concludes my presentation. I'm very honored and proud of the men and women who work Southeast Division. Presenting for you next is Captain Adrian Gonzalez of South Bureau Homicide Division.
Good afternoon now, President Briggs, Police Commissioners, Mr. Tifak, Chief Labrada, Mr. Smith, Mr. De La Guerra. So for South Bureau Homicide, we represent the four divisions at, South Bureau 77, it's going to be Southeast, Harbor, and Southwest Division. We traditionally handle 40% of the homicides in the city. And so before I speak about my numbers briefly, I want to ensure that there's understanding of the types of homicides that I will be talking about, specifically gang-related versus gang-motivated homicides. So first, we have regular homicides. A basic example is a domestic violence incident. Male, female, they get in an argument, one person kills the other. There's no gang affiliation, that's just a homicide with a motive of a dispute. When we get into using the same example, one person, either the victim or the suspect, has gang affiliation. So at that point, it's still domestic violence incident. The motive is still a dispute. However, because one person is a gang member or has been identified as being affiliated with the gang, then we make it gang related. If the motive itself is the gang, so if a suspect goes up to a victim or a victim goes up to a suspect and says, hey, where are you from? So it's specific to the gang, or that we determine through our investigation that there's some type of retaliation, gang-on-gang retaliation, or that we determine through our investigation that a gang member is trying to provide influence over their community, and that's why they are committing the crime, hence the homicide, and we make it a gang-motivated homicide. And so I just wanted to be clear so that as I speak to these, there's clear understanding on the differences. So for 2022, we had 143 homicides. Of those, 95 of those were gang-related, so that was 66%. Of the 95, 46 were gang-motivated. That accounted for 32%. Of the 143 homicides for that year, we had an overall clearance rate of 86.7 for all homicides. We were able to solve 70.5% of our gang-related homicides, which are the 95 once again. And for the gang-motivated, which was 46 for last year, we were able to solve 34 of them, which accounts for 74%. So for this year, once again, Chief Wood just spoke about it. We're up to 27 homicides, but last year at this time, we were up to 50 homicides. So that is a clear reduction. So of the 27 homicides that we've had this year, 15 have been gang-related. That accounts for 56%, and only 5 have been gang-motivated. But overall, for 2023, we have a clearance rate of 118%. Although we do have 27 homicides this year, we've closed 32 homicide cases this year, so that accounts for the over 100% clearance rate for the year. I'm going to talk about now first when it comes to our partnerships. When it comes to community and resources, we are fortunate to have partners that assist the victims' families at scene or follow up in various ways. The very first partner I'm going to talk about is going to be our grid partners. When there is a homicide, like Captain Zuracani was saying, Grid was there yesterday before I arrived, and they ensure that they connect with the families, with friends, with the community. And so when I show up with my investigators, it makes it really easy to conduct our investigations when we have a community partner who is speaking to the public, to the community, helping us reduce tensions. It allows our investigators just to come in and really do their job. And so we thank them for that partnership. Secondly, when we get there as well, sometimes a family shows up, or it's a location where the victim lives and the family's already there. If emotions are high, we also partner with the mayor's crisis response team. We'll call them from the scene. They normally come out at any time, regardless of the hour, and then help us again assist with the emotions that the families are dealing with at the time. That as well helps build relationships with us, because at some point we need to get more information from the victim. We don't have a lot to go on early on in these investigations, and we really rely on the family, understanding they're going through high emotions. Our CRT teams often come in and assist with that as well. If there's children involved, then we reach out to our REACH team. The LA City Attorney's Office has a REACH team run by Laura Drino. And so what happens is, for us, anytime that there's a child involved, either as a victim's kid, as a witness, so we find out later on that the victim had children but wasn't present. We find out later that the suspect that we've identified has children but wasn't present. We call Laura Drino's office. Most of the time they'll respond, same thing, at any time of the night. They will provide resources, emotional support, therapy to the families, to these kids. And so, once again, it's our way of showing the family that we do care, including suspects' kids. This organization, REACH, is trying to prevent generational violence from repeating itself. And so for us, it's really helpful to connect them as soon as we can. And so that's another partner that we're fortunate to share. The next person or the next organization is going to be the Los Angeles County Deputy or District Attorney's Office, their Victim Services. The same thing. We have one representative in our office after homicide, and after every homicide, they reach out to the family and provide any resources that they need for support. And so we do connect them with those resources once again after the homicide investigation is complete. Normally, the family, wants some time alone, and so by them seeing that we support them through resources, then they're more willing to talk to us and help us with the investigation. Oftentimes, we need their help. We also work with city attorneys, victim services representative. They have partners as well, but normally they're going to be support services. We work primarily with the district attorneys, victim services, just because they work out of our office. And then finally, there's a couple organizations. There's two, Parents of Murdered Children. One is run by LaWanda Hawkins. Another one is run by Kathy Familiath. And so both these organizations support, really the families of the victims. And so, each of them will contact me. They contact me for follow-up information. So families who either feel that they haven't been contacted or they don't understand the process of a homicide investigation. These families gather and they talk to support each other. And so when there's misunderstanding or they want more clarity, these organizations will connect us and my detectives with the families to ensure that they're getting the best available service. That's it. So next, I'll pass it on to our great partners, Cordell Ward and Anthony Garcia.
Hello to the commissioners and Captain, Chief Labrada. I'm Coach Cornell Ward. Work with the Grid Office and the Mayor Office of Community Safety. They changed it from public safety to community safety now. And I'll be speaking to you guys in regards to our community engagement plan. And what that is we have 23 grids from Watts all the way to the Valley. And we also have what they call CIWs, Community Intervention Workers. And all of these guys are responsible for their communities at large. They are considered, they have what they call a license to operate. That means that they're from that community, the people know them, and they have these relationships with us as a grid partner. That's the partnership. Now, the partnership also is affected by law enforcement, grid, and the community. And what takes place then thereafter is we go to what they call hotspots. We figure out where the hotspots are. We also, in turn, they put together a little roster in regards to who's from that community, who's not from that community. And then also what they do is we do what we call incident response. Now, the incident response is similar to what took place last night when Captain Z called me and said, "Coach, I'm on my way." I said, "Well, I'm on my way too." And we both arrived around the same time at the homicide. But it was, like he said earlier, it was just a blessing to see somebody from that community drive up. And it wasn't an issue or a problem, but they was trying to make sure that everything was all right versus being angry, because that wasn't several years back. It wasn't like that. And so in having this relationship with the triangle, which my colleague would talk about, is just building that stronger relationship. We are responsible every day for 12 to 15,000 folks contractually as our clients. Now, none of those babies are dying, but the surrounding babies are dying. And so we have meetings all the time to be extremely effective on how we should go about making guys put the guns down to save a life. And so when we have a conversation with law enforcement, it's a unique space to be in. However, their perception is our reality, and their reality is our perception because of how they can be labeled. when you're having communication issues. So that's why the grid office is the buffer in between, so we keep everybody safe. And that's extremely important, and that's why I believe all of these wonderful numbers that I've been hearing are happening. And we need to stick to it, and we need to stay with it. And so I would turn this over to my partner, Andrew.
Yes, hello, everybody, members of the board, Chief Labrada, and everybody to the right and behind me. Thank you all for the wonderful work that you all do. I'm going to talk a little bit about our triangle protocol, and that's in response to incidents that we get. So whenever we receive DOC notifications as well, we assess whether they're gang-related or not, or potentially gang-related or not, and we deploy accordingly. And what that might look like is we deploy to the scenes, much like the example that Coach mentioned last night. We make contact with our law enforcement partners to kind of assess any retaliation concerns, gangs involved, and deploy our community intervention workers to do their street outreach and engage the community. I kind of want to highlight what that partnership looks like, some of the do's and the don'ts. I'll start right now. The first and foremost thing is we do not share information that will jeopardize either police investigation nor the safety of our community intervention workers. In other words, we do not snitch, and we also don't compromise police investigations. We don't get in the way of law enforcement. We let them do their job, and then we do ours on the community side. And I want to highlight that because it's that nurturing of relationship that law enforcement's allowed us to be part of that space and let us do the work that we can do, and we continue to respect their space and let them do what we do, and it works really effectively. I have some numbers I'd like to share that when this triangle protocol is enacted, gang retaliations are reduced by 41.2%. Per 100 gang crimes, if there is no triangle protocol enacted, there's an estimated 45.6 retaliatory shootings, whereas the number drops to 26.8 when the triangle protocol is enacted. And that just shows the numbers that we are constantly communicating and nurturing these relationships. I did want to highlight another thing in the sense that really what it comes down to at its core is that this partnership builds the trust with law enforcement. We say what we say we're going to do. Many of them nowadays, as we've known, law enforcement's only part of what LAPD does nowadays. They're very community-based, and we've come a long way from it. And they actually defer to us to kind of be that initial person that puts out the fire before they have to get involved with suppression or enforcing the law. Another thing, in that regard, it also builds a trust in the community. We can go places that law enforcement may not be able to get into, and vice versa. And so the community gets a holistic approach. We have a really good youth development program with our intervention and prevention partners. But what this is, we're far much more than that. We have the only violence interruption model that has a relationship with law enforcement that we do through a neutral party, the neutral party being myself and Coach, regional program coordinators. Like I said, we don't snitch, and we also don't compromise police investigations, so we maintain neutrality in that regard. And then what it really does, more than anything, is it normalizes the stigma of gang members and police. We have gang members where 10% of them are doing 100% of the crime. They get a bad rep. Historically, and I think that's a sentiment law enforcement can relate to. Realizing that on the gang side, there are individuals who are just products of their environment, their fathers, mothers, sons, brothers that want more for their future, and they want to be active members in that, participating in that, same as law enforcement. We do things such as Summer Night Lights, where the triangle protocol is enacted, not only in incident response, but communication-wise for Summer Night Lights. Summer Night Lights is intended to be community outreach-based, but yet it still has impact on reduction in crime. We saw that last year there was a 3.2% reduction in crime, and that's not even the scope that it's intended to do. But this triangle protocol that's implemented in all aspects of our program is effective in reducing that. And I'm an RPC for the Valley, but I'm here because for the same reason, Valley Bureau and South Bureau have the most grid referrals overall, and that really shows the buy-in from these wonderful officers to my right and allowing us to do the work that we do, and we allow them to do the work that we do as well. And I want to thank them for their buy-in, as well as my officers over on the other side of the hill as well. And that's just a quick synopsis. I don't want to take too much time and be too long-winded, but thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our report. I know this has been a long presentation, but with that being said, we're opening it up for questions if there are any.
Thank you, Chief. I do have a question as for you, Mr. Garcia, if I heard you correctly. I mean, you were speaking fast, and that's okay. Did you say that gangs are responsible for only 10% of the crimes?
No, what I meant is the stigma, where only about 10% of the individuals that might be in a gang are committing 100% of the crime, right? There's so much more gang members that are not active in that sense. They're just regular people that, you know, are affiliated with their neighborhood.
Got it, okay. So this one is for Chief Woodyard. Would it be fair to say that Operation South Bureau has the largest number of gangs in the city?
Absolutely. I would say the sheer number of identified gangs and then the sheer number of gang members, I would say is the highest in the city. But I would also couch that with, we really look at who's active in terms of who's actually committing the crimes in our community. And I opened up with, we're being extremely strategic in terms of how we identify individuals that are gonna pick up a gun and use it. And so we work with our federal partners, and we're gonna, at the end of the day, I'm gonna be unabashed about this. If you wanna pick up a gun in our community and shoot someone, the community expects us, law enforcement, and our partners, GRID, to prevent that person from remaining in the community. As I think we took 2,869 guns off the streets last year. A lot of those individuals are not shooters, but we are concerned with people that are gonna pick up a gun and shoot that gun and injure our community. So I think our GRID partners are in lockstep with that, as well as our community as a whole. And the leaders here understand that. And so we are not gonna be an occupying army, but we're gonna be precise in terms of what we're looking for.
Thank you, Chief, and I appreciate that response. One of my concerns dovetails into what you're saying about identifying the shooter, and then also what Captain Lopez stated, which is an inability to track gangs. How do you reconcile those two statements? I mean, do you have an ability to identify not only, say, for example, a shooter, but also to identify an individual who belongs to a specific gang?
I think we have the ability to do both. Number one, a lot of that's gonna be self-admitted gang membership. And then the second part, how do we identify the shooter? I think Captain Z mentioned that specifically in Operation South Bureau, we have what we call the Crime Gun Intelligence Center. Unlike other parts of the city, we have a NIBIN machine in our bureau where we have an analyst that analyzes every casing that we identify in the community. And so we have analysts that actually, not only do they identify the casing, we identify, once we recover the gun, we identify the person that's using that gun, and then we investigate to see if that person that has that gun is actually involved in actually using that gun to shoot someone. So we're real precise in terms of how do we identify those individuals that are picking up guns, and we do a thorough investigation to ensure that the right person is brought to justice. But I also will say that we have young officers that that understand the mission in South Bureau. We're talking specifically about gangs. And so we do a lot of other things in South Bureau that I believe has had a positive impact on our ability to see almost 44% reduction in homicides, a significant reduction in robberies. A lot of that is community-based connections where we're working closely with our community-based organizations, working closely with GRID, working closely with the clergy, working closely with our CPAP members, because they know what's going on in their community. I lived in a community similar to that, that's, you know, mirrors what South Bureau looks like. And so if we don't have those intimate connections with our community, we wouldn't be able to do our job. I will say that. And then on top of that, we're not afraid to have uncomfortable conversations with our community. We're not gonna call, if a picture says, well, the shooter, or in this particular incident, the suspect happens to be African-American, I'm going to tell my officers, in this particular incident, the suspect is African-American and the victim is African-American. I'm not gonna make up a made-up story. So we're extremely precise in terms of what we're telling our officers to look for, and we paint a clear picture for them so they can do their job the right way. And as I mentioned in my opening statement, we want the same thing as a community. We want officers to do their job. We want them to go out there, engage with the community, but we want them to do it the right way. And I'm comfortable that these captains, these leaders are having those uncomfortable conversations internally and those uncomfortable conversations with our community, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing.
Chief, I appreciate that. I applaud all of you for reducing the homicides,
Yes,
reducing the shootings, particularly in your bureau, which I understand from numbers that were recently presented to the commission. If you look at it demographically, geographically in this city, still is an outlier in terms of, the numbers. So I do applaud the reduction there.
Yes, sir.
I'm still concerned, however, that with Captain Lopez's statement about an inability to track gangs. I understand recently, well, not so recently perhaps, it was the State Attorney General who got involved in the system that was apparently the department used to use to track gang members. And there were a bunch of court cases, and so the department, as a matter of policy, decided that they were going to stop having officers identify gang members. But now you indicated that someone self-identifies themselves as a gang, perhaps.
Absolutely.
I'm going to charge you, Chief, with working with our department's constitutional policing director to come up with perhaps new policies that work within the framework set out by the California Attorney General, so that we can better track and keep an eye on those members of this community who would do harm to other members of our community.
Absolutely.
I'm specifically talking about the 80 gangs or the 12,000 members within Operation South Bureau.
Yes, sir.
I think it's important for the public safety of our community.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner
If I
Shields.
can add a
Oh,
point, Commissioner.
Sure.
So currently, Detective Bureau through Gang Narcotics Division is looking at as a review process. We'll present back to the commission once we presented the chief on the ability to reinvent, or not reinvent, but bring back Cal gangs as one of the tools with strict guidance on how we manage that, how that's inputted, how that's tracked, and more importantly, what we provide our officers for training. So we'll present back to the commission on that, and I think that that's a good role for Gang Narcotics Division to take on for the city.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Shields, any questions?
Yes, and thank you all for this great presentation, and thank you to the GRID partners in particular for being here and for providing the insight that you have, and thank you for the work that you're doing. My comment was actually going to also be about the Cal Gangs database, so I appreciate President Briggs for bringing that up, and I understand that the Detective Bureau, Gang Narcotics, will be doing an analysis as well. And I would just add, another area that I'm interested in just understanding is the impact that, not having the Cal Gangs database has had both internally for the LAPD as well as for partnering law enforcement agencies who also had relied on LAPD actually inputting information into the database. So if that can also be included in the analysis. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shields. Commissioner Suthers.
Thank you. Well, first, I'd like to thank the gentleman from GRID, specifically the work you're doing with Captain Lopez and Chief Woodyard over at University Gardens with the Sherman Foundation grant. I've learned over the last year and a half what license to operate means, working with Alfred Lomas and Akil Bashir and some other people who you know, so thank you for your work there. I just want to echo Commissioner Shields and President Briggs. I know how Cal Gang worked. I'm very concerned about the guardrails that Cal Gang needs to have. I worked gangs years ago, as you know, Chief, and I know what it means when a car full of people get stopped on a traffic stop and everybody winds up on an FI card in the database. So I'm very concerned about that being re-energized when people simply by association or presence at a scene places them in cow gang unnecessarily and unjustifiably. So I'll be looking very closely, along with the other commissioners, at the policies and the guidelines to make sure that that doesn't happen, because, as you know, it can ruin a person's life.
Absolutely.
And I want to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Suthers. Commissioner Sobroff.
You have three one-word questions. The first is recidivism. These people who are shooting and killing people, some of them, I wish all of them, wound up in jail. And those that do, when they get out and come back into your communities, when you talk about 10% of the people doing 100% of the issues, how do you deal with that? Are you concerned with the recidivism? I mean, I hear that 70% wind up back in jail within 3 years.
I'm going to pass that question over to our grid partners. I think they would have programs that try to alleviate some of the recidivism, that they face. So
People come back to their communities when they get out of jail?
absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Yeah, I can go ahead and add that. So each community-based organization that contracts with GRID, a lot of them on their own have robust reentry programs, helping individuals when they come out. A lot of them they've had contact with prior to them getting incarcerated. On the GRID side, city side, we're actually developing our own reentry program as well to kind of further provide that infrastructure to kind of alleviate some of those issues of recidivism. As of right now, there's probably, I'll say about half of the GRID agencies have some sort of reentry implemented internally, and then we're continuing to build our model out as well on the city side.
How long are they staying
In the program,
for
or?
murder? How long are they staying in jail now? I mean, you hear empty the jails, do this with the jails, do that with the jails. Somebody's murdering somebody.
Life, wouldn't it?
How long?
I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't know what the average is.
Yeah.
I think it's multi-layered. I mean, that question kind of is a
Yeah.
little complex.
Yeah.
I mean, but if you look at, are we seeing folks that our officers have arrested for a gun, and are we seeing them back on the streets within a short period of
Yeah,
time?
sure.
Absolutely.
I see.
We've seen that. But I can tell you that there's a lot more energy behind identifying repeat offenders, at least on our end, and we're starting to get some traction
Okay.
in that area, because we know what the community wants, and we know our officers are going to go out there and do exactly what we need them to do. And it could get frustrating, but the conversation that we're having, at least in South Bureau, is that we are not going to wave the white flag. You do your part of enforcement and allow the other pieces to take place, and whatever happens with that is not necessarily something that we get into. But at the end of the day, our officers understand that.
Question
Maybe
number two,
someone-
the
I'm
one
sorry.
word is cartels, organized crime. How are they impacting gangs, the 80 gangs in your communities? Are they, or are they working in other
I can
ways?
respond to that.
Yeah.
So we have a pretty strong presence working alongside the DEA, ATF, FBI, predominantly with our HIDTA task forces. Really, what they're operating on here with the cartels is the narcotics trade. And now we're seeing a lot of the human trafficking aspect as well. Fentanyl being a big part of that. And a lot of that, unfortunately, makes it out to the streets in South LA and other parts of the city as well. So a big part of that is having those task forces, the HIDTA task forces, LA Cleared, all these other federal task forces jointly work alongside. He did mention the work that ATF is doing with the Gun Violence Center there at South Bureau. It's really a model of what's being done, not only in addressing the gun violence, but tracking down those shooters. One day they're shooting somebody in San Bernardino, next day they're back in South LA shooting somebody else. And the ability to trace those casings through NIBIN is the ability to track these individuals down, and they can't get away. So the work is being done, and the cartel issue is significant, but we have to continue to target that through the federal task forces.
Okay. Now, my third, you started this with the landmarks in South LA area. You left off my favorite, Harold and Bell's. But I want to end on a lighter. You guys know any other great restaurants on there that I'm missing? I mean, I love to go in those communities.
Harold and
We're
Bill's.
spending hours talking about how scary and dangerous and gangs. Hit us with a couple other spots, will you?
There are a number of, oh, here we go.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
There are a number of restaurants that
Come
you
on, to be
absolutely.
specific here, come on.
Well, man, let me see here. What is the waffle
Anybody.
shop that's right
One or two more.
off of Big? It's the where we just had the coffee with the coffee.
Doolin's is closing, right?
Well, Doolin's is
It's Crenshaw.
he's closed on Crenshaw, but I think he still has the catering,
Good.
so we still claim him. Although he still has he has a location in Inglewood.
South
We
LA is a
still
wonderful place to go with wonderful people and wonderful
absolutely.
things to visit and just want to
there are a
keep
number
that in the
number of
in the mix.
restaurants down in Harbor area. There's a number in
At the port, yeah.
There, the port. I mean, there's a lot of different areas, but because we're talking specifically about gangs, it's scary, but that's what we're called for. If you wanted me to give you some of the real highlights, I
We'll
could.
give you restaurant.
Okay.
Off later.
Thank you for getting me off the hook there.
Commissioner Kalante.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I think that the conversation about gangs is interesting because it's not against the law to affiliate with a gang, right? As you were just mentioning, and Commissioner Southers, I appreciate that. It's against the law to commit a crime while being a gang member, or even just commit a crime in general. So I think that the GRID office has done a really good job in being able to work with our department as we oversee the department. And also, I'll go as far as educating our officers about the need to be respectful in a community, even if somebody is, I grew up in a gang area. My brothers were not part of a gang, but they had friends that were, and it didn't matter that they weren't part of a gang, they would get stopped. That was how we operated, right? And I think that, and they probably were ID'd as gang members, right? Because that's what we did, and the department got sued, right, for doing that. So I think that this partnership with GRID and being thoughtful about Cal gangs is really important because, as Commissioner mentioned, how we identify a young person, especially a young man of color, does have an impact on their life, right? So I appreciate the partnership and how open the department has been to working with GRID. Early on, I was involved with a GRID. I'm working with GRID as a provider. I'm not a provider anymore, but it took a lot to build trust between both entities, right? Where sometimes an interventionist wouldn't want to be seen with the police officer. Those are actual realities where an interventionist wanted to kind of be neutral, right? And police officers wouldn't allow interventionists to come into crime scenes, right? Because we don't trust you, right? And I think that a lot has been done by all of you, working in your managing your divisions, the communities that you work in, and building those relationships with our GRID interventionists and GRID prevention providers that I believe has come a long way into building trust, and that we're able to work together, because I don't think that we can address these issues if we're not working together, both in the law enforcement and the community building and building that bridge. And so GRID is really important, as well as some of the other providers and community leaders. So I appreciate that. I also do want to say, connected to some of the earlier comments about recidivism and things like that, I think that as we hear a lot in our public comment, it's an economics issue why young people join gangs, right? And the ability to have, good paying jobs and pathways to good jobs is really important, as is public safety, right? So we need to invest in public safety because people want to live a safe, life and raise their children in a safe community. But as a city and as a business community, we need to invest in an economic pathway so that we're not having young people having to turn to selling drugs or stealing and things like that. So it's a very complicated issue, but I I think that the partnership that we've built between our divisions and the grid office is paying dividends in that we're able to work together versus in the old days where we didn't trust each other, right? So I appreciate the work that you're doing and continuing to build those partnerships with community so that community can be involved in solving some of their issues. So I just wanted to appreciate your work and hopefully this leads to a lot more partnerships.
Yeah, can I chime in real quick as well? Thank you for reinforcing that, and I think going back to what I said earlier, I think a lot of it is media driven, right, with terms of gangs, and then the commonality in that. I think law enforcement has the same sentiment. We have there's not to deny the bad bunch on each side, right, but there's a lot of good on both as well that needs to be highlighted. Like I said, many gang members are just trying to live normal lives. They want more for their kids. Same as law enforcement, they're doing their job in the community, and they're doing it very, they're upholding their prestige and their integrity on a day-to-day. So I think when we find those commonalities, and we're able, and on our side, on the city, as regional program coordinators, we are that neutrality, so that we've become that buffer, that liaison, and that's what, it took a lot of nurturing. We've come a long way from injunctions and 100 days and 100 nights, but I think, we're finally moving forward, and we're seeing that it can be done on a community side, and I think that's why Deputy Mayor Lane and Mayor Bass established the Community Safety Department, is that all these issues, the homelessness issue, the fentanyl crisis, the gangs, this is not just a one-lane law enforcement, gang, drug prevention, it's community, it takes a village, and I think that's kind of what we're all, right in that same sentiment now.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Calante. And thank you all for a great presentation. I look forward to, in the future, coming out to the South Bureau and visiting each one of you and drilling down into some of the specifics that we've discussed today.
Yes, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
At this time, we're going to be in recess for a closed session.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss items number 5A, 1, and 2 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded their work in closed session. We are now back in open session. The Executive Director will report out.
As released, item 5A, 5A1, officer involved shooting number 026-22. Commission on the 5-0 vote adopted the recommendations of the Chief of Police, which were tactical debrief, 2 Sergeant 2s, 1 Police Officer 3, 1 Police Officer 2. Drawing, exhibiting, and policy, 1 Police Officer 3, and 1 Police Officer 2. Lethal use of force and policy, 1 Police Officer 3, 1 Police Officer 2. Item 5A2, law enforcement-related injury, number 033-22. Commission adopted the Chief's recommendations on a 5-0 vote. Recommendations were tactics in policy, 1 Lieutenant 2, and administrative disapproval, 1 Police Officer 2. Less lethal use of force in policy, 1 Police Officer 2. That concludes the report out.
Thank you, Mr. Tiefenk. At this time, there being no further business before the Board of Police Commissioners, I move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.